We're good.
Well, I've got 15 more seconds, but I suppose it's close enough. Huh? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting, Wednesday, May 16th. The time is 6:30 sharp. Please rise for an invocation by Ann and the pledge.
Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the privilege of living here in this lovely community. Please give us strength, guidance, and your discernment as we make hard decisions tonight. And let us do it in a collegial manner. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Pledge, please.
Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Georgiana.
Here.
Director Ann Rice.
Here.
President Ann Whittle.
Here.
Vice President Cliff Jacobson.
Here.
Director Bill Hall.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda, approval of consent calendar. Anybody have any questions or comments to it? If none, I'd appreciate a motion.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Public participation. This is item 3 on the agenda. Please review it. And at this time, if there's anybody that wishes to speak to anything that is not later on the agenda, please come forward, and we would enjoy your participation with us.
Okay, if I start? Let's just take one and pass it down. For your information only, this is the same report from last month. It just shows now that the information that DWR is reporting to our news media is exactly the opposite of the way it was last month, where our performance as measured in conservation, it is now one of the leaders in Butte County. Amazing, isn't it, how the numbers turn out that way?
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I don't expect you to explain it. It's just that it's there for your information. Somehow or another, DWR reports it that way. Here's the thing. The next topic here is a little more important, though. This is about transparency, which is a buzzword, and it came about in December of 2010 when the city of Bell fiasco hit the news. You remember this? Bell, one of the poor cities in Los Angeles County. They were paying their top officials some of the highest salaries in the nation. The people didn't know it. In addition to the $787,637 salary of the chief administrative officer, the police chief was getting $457,000 a year, and the assistant city manager was getting $376,000 a year, and the people didn't know it. Much lack of transparency. Since then, a lot has happened in the way we look at our public meetings. The interest in the truth from public representatives that looks for transparency in all public meetings. And here, much has been said about PID being the people's water company. And frankly, I think that's the correct thing to do. After all, it started with a bond approved by nearly every resident of Paradise 100 years ago. This was emphasized during the 100-year anniversary in 2016 and even more so during the time of the recall of the previous board. Even Director Jacobson was quoted in a post just a couple of months ago that PID is the people's water company. So we keep acknowledging that. So when there is praise from a customer about PID, we the people, like me, can take pride in that. But when there's a complaint, am I, the public, to blame? What if there's a complaint from an employee? Am I to blame? Last month, I hoped to hear this board ask specific questions regarding a continuing claim against PID, and I was completely disappointed. You asked management 2 questions about the employee's complaint. This made it obvious that you had not read all 26 pages of the employee's complaint. If you were fully aware of the employee's complaint, you would have addressed all 13 issues on pages 25 and 26, not just the 2 soft questions you did ask. Furthermore, since the employee's complaint is for a lot of money and their claim is against PID as well as this board, and the previous boards, and 2 management members, and the firms of Moots and Cook, I'm personally included here because I'm the people, and PID is the people's water company. I don't feel responsible for the board's mistakes. The details in the employee's claim are specific in their distrust of managers Barber and Phillips. The claim includes that Barber and Phillips purposely avoided an independent audit of each employee's retirement plan contributions. Worse yet, this went on for years. It is unconscionable that an organization such as this can employ two managers that appear to be deliberately cheating the employees, and there must be, or has been, some kind of collusion with Moots and Cook. To what purpose? Were Barber and Phillips being paid a kickback from Moots and Cook under the table? You five are not the board that was responsible for oversight of managers Barber and Phillips when these changes were made. But you have let this go on without making the employees whole. You asked about that. They weren't made whole. When the employees win their suit in court and PID loses, every person in Paradise will have to pay the court's award. Suppose the court awards a fine of most grievous case awards, and it totals 100 times what their claim is. That'd be $100 for every person in the town of Paradise. That's why I appeared in court for the April 20th hearing to plead with the court that the people of Paradise not be responsible for paying the award to the employees. Furthermore, what has been done can't be undone. But it is clear that the current CFO cannot be trusted as a fiduciary or trustee of financial accounts. It's clear in the claim the employees have made. He has been caught. This is not just another mistake. The July 2013 decision to change the employees' retirement accounts to Moots and FTJ Cook was a deliberate act of management. Mr. Phillips is the remainder of that original management. He can't be trusted. And I, speaking as the public, do not want him in any management position at my water company. This issue is frequently being discussed in closed session, as if to say, this is nobody's business. But it is a public record, Butte County Superior Court case number 17CV02546. You could have looked it up if you wanted to. It was on your agenda previously. You're not being transparent with the public. Shame on you. Why have you been hiding this? Why are you covering for the mistakes of Mr. Phillips? This is a class action lawsuit on behalf of all employees and is scheduled for a jury trial of March of 2019. This board is losing the respect of the people and the respect of the employees. This board needs to be responsive to the people. This board needs to give direction to council and to get more than one-page summary pages when you are being sued. Thank you for your time, but I will let you know that both the Post and the ER and TV12 is aware of this.
Thank you, Mr. Habriel. Anyone else wish to come forward and speak?
I can't say I'm knowledgeable on some of these political issues, but I really would like to praise a couple of guys that did a hell of a lot more work than I did last time we had a work day out here. I enjoyed doing some planting out there, and that was kind of the extent of what I could do. There are a couple of guys, I think Michael and Chuck, those guys the next day, they worked their asses off out here putting irrigation out there, and I was surprised. I saw it running. It was all continuous coverage. I couldn't have done that well when I was younger. And so, in fact, I'd like to hire those guys. And Ward was out there, and Bill was out there, and Ann. There were good people out there, but those guys really did a hell of a job for you guys. That job was worth a lot of money, what they did for you. I hope you guys appreciate it. I appreciate what they did. And I just want to pay them a compliment. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, and that is absolutely a fact. Every time I go by out there, it seems that Chuck is out there working. I honk. Sometimes I stop and thank him, and wish I were retired. I'd be out there with him.
Fred, could you give us your name?
I'm Fred Hooker.
Yeah, and you're a retired landscaper, right? Sort of retired. Yeah, okay. I just for the secretary to have for the record.
I should remind people to do that. Thank you. All right. Seeing no one else, we'll move on to item number 4, staff and billing reports. Kevin.
So you have the staff and billing reports, and I can answer any of the questions that might pop out to you. If Neil's here somewhere, he might be coming back here shortly, but if you have questions for him, he's here present today. The distribution side and the treatment side have the night off, so I'll do my best on giving their reports.
Go back and get Neil? I'm sure he's in his office probably.
I can, well, if you have questions for him, I go back and grab him.
Yeah, I'll go see if I can get him for you.
You have questions for him?
It is nice to see that the equipment, the new leak detection equipment is working well.
Yep, they've been working with that, and they've found leaks, and they've been able to locate them within a certain area. And we haven't found a geyser yet, but definitely ones that aren't surfacing. So.
Right. Well, that's on the tiny drawback of the new equipment. We're going to see our leak thing going up because we're finding more that we didn't know were
You're going to be
there.
able to find them, exactly.
I had a question. I have some for Neil, but while we're waiting, it said the trout was delivered on Sunday afternoon, April 22nd.
Yeah.
Wasn't the fishing day that day? Were they delivered after the event?
No, that must be a typo.
It was
Okay.
delivered on a Sunday evening, wasn't it?
It was delivered Sunday,
Sunday.
but it was a week before.
The week
Yeah,
before.
a week before
Okay.
it was
I
fishing day.
said, oh, that
Yeah.
And the
that
lake
doesn't
is
make sense.
closed during that time. Yeah. No,
All you'd
it
have to do is
it was,
stand there with
it was
a
a
net.
week before for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, so then I did have a question for. Oh, sure.
Nice to see the lake permit issuance is going up.
Yep. Looks like we're beating last year from as of this right now. So we've been getting quite a few people coming in the office and buying lake permits, yearly passes.
So I have a question from page 24. This is from the treatment side, but it concerns the NPDES permit. I'm hoping Neil can answer it. It's item 2, paragraph F. Pond freeboard requirements are not currently being met. This will have to be remedied. The next permit cycle will require the 2 feet of freeboard and runoff control similar to the current permit. Could you tell me what that means, please? I just don't understand it.
I can cover
you can
it
do
too.
it? Okay.
Is that our current there's a current requirement in there that's supposedly a boilerplate requirement that you are required to have 2 feet of freeboard, meaning that that the water you should have enough wall on your pond that it's 2 feet above the water level at all times. And so that you don't have a major runoff and then that overtops the pond. And so right now, I think what we're saying is we have about that much freeboard on there, and that's where our overflow spout is. So what we're looking at is, it didn't seem like it was going to be a major requirement or a major fix that we're going to have to do, is just basically increase the size of the wall on that side to go 2 feet above the drain, or drop the drain down to alleviate so that there's 2 feet of freeboard. So it's just that two feet of that area on there,
Okay.
on the ponds.
That's the
On the
drain
ponds.
into the lake?
That's the overflow for the ponds into the lake. That's correct. It would be the overflow drain that would actually go into the
That would
lake.
actually be the drain we would use under this new thing we're talking
No,
about.
that's the-
Co-mingling and
Free,
so forth.
freeboard from where the water level is to where the top would be before it would spill over.
Yeah, I understood
It's
that.
It's like an
I just was
emergency
the
drain.
would be the existing supply to supply water if you're going to commingle it in the lake. That's-
We have two releases out of there. It would be the overflow release and then our normal release, right?
Actually, I think there's only one outlet to the ponds.
Is that it?
It's a fixed weir. It's kind of like a large concrete cylinder that's set on end. But currently, the top of that cylinder is only probably 6 or 8 inches
Yeah.
below the top
Right.
of the pond. The kind of dam constructs the downstream side of the pond at the south pond. The north pond has a good amount of freeboard. That was the one that was constructed most recently. The south pond, which is actually 2 small ponds, go back to the 1970s or so, I believe, and those have pretty skimpy freeboard. So their
Okay.
concern is just that if we were to have some major amount of water go in there, that it could overtop that, and then if it overtops that dirt dike, it could very easily erode that away, causing the entire contents of the pond to go downhill into the reservoir.
Yeah.
Kind of like what happened in Oroville.
Yeah. Could happen.
Not exactly that. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Oh,
It's up to whoever
my
has.
comments on page 14. It's showing the curve is still going up as far as water loss, leak history. We have the testing thing to test for leaks now, but the problem still remains the same as if you have a summary of the pipe in here, 2 pages over, how many miles there are. And there's steel 4 to 12 inches is 33% of our supply, and most of that steel, I think, is World War II surplus. Neil, is that right?
I'm not sure where that steel pipe came from, but it's not the pipe.
It's not new pipe. But that's where most of our leaks are, I think, is. And that's why I keep bringing this up, is that's where I think our money should be going, that we're borrowing like $11 million for something I think we can do for less. And take, if you want to borrow that much money and put it into pipelines work, I would certainly support that. Anyway.
I think these leak detections are going up because we've got better means of finding them now, too.
That's what we just said, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
It's not like they were leaking more badly, it's just that we're better at
We're better at finding them.
fixing it.
No, it actually is leaking water.
Yeah,
It's both together. The leak detector tells us where to go to find it, rather than doing it by date, is what we used to do. So that's quite an improvement.
yes.
So just a little heads up, just so that we know what we're talking about. That leak one just is the number of leaks. This report right here, looking on your screen, is your water loss thing. So there's no, we're not have the two correlations on the same map, on the same graph. This is the other correlation of the water loss that we're experiencing currently, or unaccounted for water.
Well, part of the water loss going down is a part of, you can just follow it, of use going down by our customers. If you knock down the percentage of material, water going through the system and down, and then so this is a percentage graph, isn't it?
Why would that make a
Calculated,
difference if the lines are
water
full of
loss.
water, they're going to leak whether you're
It's a
dropping them?
calculated water loss, Bill. It's the amount of water leaving the treatment plant, and then the amount of
Subtract
water
what we sell.
from the meters. From
Okay.
all the meters come, aggregated.
Yeah, and the big, just for education, the big drop, and I think Neil will agree with me, is two pipe replacements, Billy Road and Skyway, that we replaced in 2009, between 2009 and 2011. That had a huge impact, and then the automated meter reading system has had a huge impact of replacing all the meters to get better reading of those meters for under-reporting of those meters. And both those projects were done almost simultaneously.
I have a comment on that. One of my sons had a nice stream that went behind his house and everything, and of course, since the work was done on it's gone down, way down. It was largely supplied by PID water. So.
Just to clarify, though, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, but if the water leak is on the other side of the meter, then that would indicate a leak because less of a leak because of less of use. But if it's on our side of the meter, doesn't matter how much water is being purchased, the leaks are going to remain consistent, correct?
Yes. The leakage that you see here is our leakage.
Correct.
What happens on the customer side of the meter, that's revenue water.
Right.
Even though they don't make good use of the water, it may be leaking out and running, somewhere that they would rather it didn't go, but we still take revenue.
Right, but my point is, we don't have less leaks because we're using less water. We have less leaks because we found them and fixed them. It has nothing to do with the volume that we're selling going
Just
down.
remember, we're talking leaks versus volume.
Yeah.
Unaccounted for water
Right.
versus
Exactly,
Right,
that's the point I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you might put it in dollars and cents. We're also getting less income. So.
I just had a question for you, Neil. You said you did some work for page 32, on the emergency action plans. Is our consultant putting together the emergency action plan?
mitigation study.
Yeah, that's.
We, Jim Passanisi and Neil did the emergency action plan.
Oh, you did. Oh, fantastic.
Jim Passanisi's doing most of the work on the emergency action plan, but I'm preparing some, graphs and figures and whatnot that go into that.
Oh, wow. Great. Okay. I didn't know if they were doing it or we were doing it.
So we're doing the emergency action plan, and
Okay.
then the consultant's doing the inundation study.
Right.
And then they get combined through, to submit it to the state, both of those.
Great. Thank you, Neil.
I think Jim's also doing the Sears filing, the emergency response plan up there in AB 2185 and the Sears filing for the business plan.
Right.
Yeah, they're doing that as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Any further questions? Can move on to B then?
We have to,
Well, they can be done as one.
okay.
Why is there a negative on the service fee, 2130?
Say that one more time.
Why did it reduce,
On service fees.
Mm-hmm.
So service fees is like penalties and 48-hour notices and
Oh,
those
that
type
kind
of
of-
things.
that
Those
kind of thing.
auxiliary fees that we charge, that's what those are, and why they reduced. I guess less people relate this
Yeah,
last month.
that's a good thing to be less.
That's right.
Year
Yes.
over year.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, so it's just those auxiliary fees.
It's interesting to see that our delinquent past due bill on both sides has gone up. Is there any idea what's causing that, or? Economy's supposed to be booming. So.
Past due bills.
Yeah, it's down.
To be honest, they're not. They're actually down because there was a rate increase in between that and that date. So dollar value wise, they're up $1,000, but numbers wise, they're actually probably down a little bit. At least on April's. March's, you can see went up. That's probably about the same, just based on rate increase wise.
Okay. Any questions from the public in regards to 4A and B? Okay, then if there are no further questions, action would be appreciated.
I move we accept the staff and billing reports.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, number 5, District Manager's Report. Kevin.
Okay, you have my written report, and I'll kind of walk through each one of the items here. The water rights, I think we're going to talk about that on the agenda, so I'll just kind of skip that one until we get into the agenda item, so we're not double dipping on that one. The North Bay boat launch, that's on the agenda too, so we'll skip that one, and that's we'll cover that when it gets there. Process water recycle project, so it's more of an NPDES permit renewal now. Me, Neil, Jim Passanisi, Bill, Taylor, and our consultants met with the regional board on April 26th for a kickoff meeting for the NPDES permit renewal. The memo that you guys have seen was delivered to them before the meeting, so they had time to study it, to give us feedback on what they felt, if there was any additional studies that needed to be done. And I felt like everything was very, very positive. If all of our assumptions pan out based on our study, then I don't see that there's any hiccup from us getting a renewal with the mixing zone study and dilution credits in there. There wasn't too much concern. One of the concerns about the ponds was the freeboard, but other than that, there didn't seem to be a ton of concern about that. They did give us some more information about what to sample and where to sample. So we're in the process of doing some additional sampling, sampling within our the plume track to prove out that there is the dilution that we're getting, that the numbers that we're presented in the modeling actually pan out based on the assumptions that we're making. We're also taking samples for our DCBM and aluminum in a different location now. It's at the last inlet into Magalia Reservoir. So the last inlet comes in, we're taking it on the other side of that inlet, and we're taking it at very high levels to prove out that there's no DCBM or any aluminum. Or we know there's aluminum background, but there's no DCBM background. And all the studies have already come back with no non-detects. So we were hoping for. So that's a good positive thing that we're coming through.
That's not near the dam where the water's going to go in co-mingling? That's above, at the top of Magalia Reservoir?
Right. So
below the diversion dam that puts it into the pipe?
It's below, yeah. So if you're looking here, if Neil can point out, it's
Here, just below where Fairhaven Creek enters the reservoir.
And we were taking our sample down closer to where the inlet was, and we were getting some background DCBM, and we knew there wasn't any background DCBM. So this was to prove out that there was no background DCBM in
Well, but where we're going to co-mingle it, where the pipes come down to the pond, are you testing that water so we have a record on what
So
we
what we're
have?
doing is we're going to take samples within that plume. Right when that water enters, we're going to take samples a certain feet out from the bank to show that there is dilution going on within what we're trying to prove out.
The only test we've done was water going in, just before it went into the lake, one sample, and it showed that aluminum actually went up from where it was in the pond because it ran down in this little riparian stream after it left the pond. It didn't go into a pipe until it was collected laid down below. If you walk it, which I've done, you would see where the pipes are laid and so forth. And each pond has a different distribution system to get to the lake. One pond's quite a bit of distance, maybe a quarter of a mile of open creek, and it does have the makings of you could classify not just riparian, but call it a wetland in that distribution. But the only thing that saves it from it is it doesn't run all the time. But we need to take samples in those areas and understand that we're going to have to put pipes from the ponds down, and the pipes should be like a galvanized pipe that has rills in it that make the water action, because the action of the water like that will get rid of the I can never pronounce it. At any rate, but it won't get rid of the aluminum. And so we need to know exactly how much aluminum we're going with, because that one would trip us up if it commingles down there with a sample, which they're requesting in the papers I've read from them, that the sample would come down there. It's nice to have a background sample all the way up there, but really where you need to be sampling is where the water is dropping into the lake now. And look back up those streams, 2 of them, and we're already sampling at the ponds, because I got in trouble years ago going out and looking at I got real excited. Where would the water go into the pipes? And it turned out I didn't know, and nobody else could tell me. So I was up there walking around when I did that, and it was a Saturday, so I went over to the water treatment plant and rang the door bell. Those guys work 24/7. So I got in all sorts of trouble because I woke up the water treatment guy, and he told me the answer, where the water actually goes into the pipe and where they pull their samples. And I thanked him. Later on, I got told I shouldn't have done that. But it's really critical we understand that, and we don't get caught. We need to do more sampling closer in on the pipes, and also it wouldn't hurt if we even pulled some soil samples around the ponds to see if that is increased in the side walls of the ponds holding the water, and see if we're picking up an accumulation of aluminum in the ponds, not just what's normally there. And knowing something, we don't have any tests. I've tried for years to get these tests, and there isn't any that I know of. Maybe Niels knows better. I don't know.
Bill, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to get a profile of the existing conditions out there, okay? And so we're following the guidelines that the state regional board is telling us to do. When they tell you to do sampling, they are very specific and say this is where we want the sample points to be for this particular study. So that's what's going on right now. We're looking at existing conditions. I agree with you, there could be improvements done out there, and there probably will be improvements done to those ponds. But we have to get a profile of the existing conditions. That's what's going on.
What I'm talking about is us doing it. I'm not talking about water treatment, because in their computerized thing, they've largely ignored the aluminum content. They've said the DCPM is a potential cancer thing. So the aluminum has other effects, and it's just what I'm trying to say is a district needs to know for their own use when you go to the water people or not. You don't have to give them the results of these tests. I found that out several years ago. Either you can test them and keep them in-house unless they request them.
Okay,
question
I'd
about
like to have my say on this. First of all, when we went to the water board and we asked for what would be required to obtain our permit, we told them where we were sampling and what we were doing. And as you recall, they came back and very confidently said, well, if you're not in compliance, it's because of the results that you gave us and where you were testing. Now, if you want to look at another way of doing it, then do so and bring us those numbers. And if we like those numbers, we'll give you your permit. So what we're doing now is we paid people a lot of money to tell us how to do this correctly to get the results that they want to allow us to have that permit, okay? And we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot to go out and try to dig up background samples somewhere that we would have that are meaningless, quite honestly, in the scope of what we're trying to do. Certainly, I can probably go out and find heavy amounts of aluminum and DCBM if you want me to. I'm sure I can sleuth it out and find some areas and detect it and get positives. That's not the point. The point is we're backwashing our filters into a body of water, and we want to prove that we're not contaminating that body of water to the point where when it comes back into our water treatment plant, that we exceed what's allowable. And we shot ourselves in the foot by not doing the calculations properly. Now we hired somebody that said, this is how you do it, and we've done it. And the state is saying, we like your numbers. We know what the background is now, we know what you're adding to it, and we know what the residuals are, if any, and they're zero, going into our intake to our water treatment plant. We're in compliance. Why cause problems?
Rock the boat.
Here goes my history lesson. Several years ago, I suggested to the board and to the employees that we take samples like you're doing now, that we put it in and commingle it. And I was told by the water people, even during the recall process, that they didn't want that. They wanted just what they had at the time. They weren't going to consider it even.
It's changed now.
Then it's changed now, and I'm very grateful for the change there. But all I'm saying is be ahead of the curve, because in their computer module, if you read it through and what they're doing, because they're going off a computer model and why they're telling us to do these things, and they sort of skip over the aluminum part. And my concern is that could be a blind spot. And if we do exceed the aluminum, when we actually start taking samples commingled out of that particular spot, then we could have to be forced to change things. So I'm saying, why don't we get information ahead of time? And I'm not suggesting where to go to take the samples. That's up to the water treatment people. That's up to the staff. I'm just suggesting that as a district, we look ahead and be prepared. And if there's nothing there, wow, great, we don't have any concern. You can tell me we wasted money. It's like when I got the one sample, I was told by Ken Hunt very vigorously that we just wasted $200 worth of district's money pulling a sample. And it's turned out, no, it wasn't a waste. It's something to refer to.
Well, if we take this...
Guys, can I interrupt for a second? I think if you're going to continue to debate whether to take additional samples, we need to agendize the discussion for a future board.
But actually, just to put it to rest, yes, if you take a sample of the concentrated effluent, you're going to get high levels. That's the point. That's not what's representative of what we're bringing back in.
The high levels were after it left the pond and went down the riparian way.
I just wanted to verify.
And make one comment and then...
Okay, I just wanted to verify with you that our sampling model will include discharge from the one set of ponds or the other set over the time that we're doing the sampling for the board.
For the regional board.
Yeah. It'll cover when we're discharging from the two ponds or the back pond, right? The time.
I believe so. The pond operation is kind of done on an every other year basis. So we put the pond in service for a year. Then after the year is out, we switch to the other pond. And then that pond is dry, and we remove the material, the solid material from that pond after it's dry.
So we might want to consider so we get both
year thing, so
scenarios.
It kind of depends on what the timing is of when we switch ponds as to whether we'll be sampling
from either one.
or not,
Okay.
and what they'll be looking at during those time frames.
And then-
I'm not familiar with what pond we're on right now or when we're planning on switching. So
And then just to make the point, we are regulated at the point of compliance, the point where they tell us to sample. That's where we're regulated.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing interim sampling of that plume to see what kind of numbers we're getting, to see if they actually turn out to be what we've modeled. And we're assuming for at least DCBM that there's a very small plume, and then the aluminum even was a pretty small plume based on what they've seen allowable in the past. So we're feeling pretty good. We'll see what the numbers come out, and we're just moving on their direction. From a timeline standpoint, they felt like they're going to start working. They're actually starting to gather data now, start working on the beginning of the fiscal year. I believe they were going to have a draft to us in February or December. It was December. I think the draft was December. Then it would go to the public in February, and they were hoping to have our new permit to us in April. So that's the timeline that we're trying to stay on.
That's great.
So
A year from now.
the BRES, I wasn't able to make the meeting, but Neil was there. Were you at the 90% plan meeting? Yeah. That they have 90% plans, design plans for us. They're working on getting bid docs completed to us. We're going to have the bid docs reviewed by legal to make sure that everything's in compliance on the legal side, and that their recommendation was a steel bolted tank. That's 2 steel bolted tanks, 2.3 million, and
Glass lined.
glass lined, and that they went and looked at a steel bolted tank, and there was a concern that they were worried about not being able to put the release valve or the release side on the bottom. So they were going to have to put it on the side, which meant you were going to lose a little bit of the volume of the
Capacity.
tank. And they went and talked to a contractor, and the contractor, no big deal, we can do it. And so Neil pushed that really well, actually, to push them to see that. And so they're going to be able to do that, which means we have full volume of the tanks.
Yeah, because I think we talked about that being important to get that volume, that extra, the way it was plumbed.
Maximum volume, yeah.
So everything's looking at. Do you want to add anything to that?
Usually have one on the side, so if you have to enter the tank.
And that'll be coming. We believe that design will be coming to you next board meeting.
Great.
So we're
Thank
planning on having them here for the next board meeting. Spillway investigation. Neil, you're on the docket on this thing. Neil's actually been working with Gentera on getting the spillway investigation report to the DSOD. We've submitted the Paradise Lake spillway investigation to DSOD for their review. And did we? Huh? And we just submitted the Megalia one today.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful.
Great.
So they have both of our spillway investigations. That'll be something that will be coming to the board after we get comments back from DSOD for your guys' approval and for your guys' education. It's a big education document about some of the potential pitfalls of both of the spillways and kind of decisions that the board, how the board wants to move forward with each one of those pitfalls.
Do you have any indication how long that might be? 2 months, 6 months?
It's in DSOD's hands.
No way of telling.
Timeframe for what? For DSOD's
Yeah.
Yes, their comments to it.
I don't know. I'm guessing it won't be fast. They're having a problem with staffing levels, considering that they've got so much more work to do now, and they don't really have a lot of additional bodies, I don't think.
Well, maybe by 2020 we'll get an answer.
Yeah, and we know that because they just sent us a letter that our dam fees are going to be increased tremendously this year and 20% the next year.
But of course.
Naturally.
Yeah.
Another unfunded mandate.
So we're waiting on their review of that. The thought process going forward is once we get their review back and we finalize the phase 1, whatever phase 2 work needs to be done will be we're going to recommend going to an RFP on that phase 2 work to go out and get competitive bids on doing phase 2 work.
So, if I understand correctly, it's at a standstill now until we get comments back, then we proceed with Gentera. Yeah.
Right, Gentera will finalize.
They're not going to continue drawing the plans
No,
to completion.
No. It's in DSOD's hands now.
Yes, good.
Whatever review comes back, Gentera will do whatever
Respond
adjustments and
accordingly.
edits or whatever needs to be done until it's finalized with DSOD. Once that's finalized with DSOD, that'll come to you guys for an education and for decision making, and then whatever phase 2 work we need to do, we will go out for RFP. That's our thought process right now. And then on the PG&E Miocene Canal, we sent the letter of interest. We haven't heard anything back from them at this point. I've been on 2 conference calls with power companies that are looking to partner with us. What that partnership really looks like, it's really kind of vague. Yeah. They just know that they like hydro and not managing water, where they know that we can do a fairly good job of managing the water, and we're close in proximity. Most of the one company is out of Washington, the other one I think was out of Maryland, and they have had success in the past of buying up hydro plants from PG&E or from some of the other power agencies out there and making them work. So we're listening to all options at this point, and we're still in the hunt with PG&E and talking to PG&E, but it just kind of they haven't really responded to us at this point. So.
Were we able to reschedule a tour date?
Not yet. They wanted that letter of interest before we rescheduled. Okay. So, yep.
And then on the BRES, did we hire a consultant to research the title, the ownership of the properties?
Can you take it?
Yeah, you can take that one.
Did we hire? No, not yet. I spoke with someone and asked them to kind of give us a feel as to what that would look like. I got a response back a day or so ago. I have not yet talked to Kevin and Neil about it, but it confirms essentially what you know, which is who knows.
It's a mess.
Don't know?
Yeah, yeah. So Union Pacific definitely has some ownership in the area, and we need to regroup and decide kind of the most cost-effective, efficient way to either try to contact Union Pacific and see if they will agree, or if we need to go through condemnation proceedings, and then how far we need to go to try to track down the unknowns. I'm optimistic maybe Union Pacific can provide us with some information that will resolve some of these ambiguities, but that may be a little too optimistic. I know, Dan, you're skeptical.
I'm talking to a couple of people at the county to no avail. You know, so far. So.
Yeah, I think it's a mystery.
Yeah, it's a mess.
We're definitely plugging down that line. My thoughts, and just talking with Emily, is that we might do our own legwork to try to get in touch with Union Pacific ourselves and see if maybe we can do some of that legwork ourselves in-house to see if maybe there's a way we can get some type of understanding of what their ownership interest is, or at least some of the background interest. So that might be something we're pounding the phones, calling up Union Pacific to find the right person that can help us out.
I got a way to find out. Just take a backhoe out there and start digging.
And find out who shows up.
Whoever shows up, you know. Hey.
Wait.
I don't know that I can support that plan.
Just joking.
We don't want to derail the project.
Yeah, really. But at least we find out if anybody owns it.
Any other questions?
Any other questions in regards to 5B? 5. Anybody from the public wish to address anything? Please come forward. And like I forgot before, give us your name, please.
Hello, I'm Robin Huffman. And even though we're going to talk about water rights later on, I have specific questions about what's written here. So, last sentence, the district has also changed the project because we have decided to go to license on permit 271. So, who's the we?
The district.
The district, yeah.
The district. Did the board of directors decide? And when? Was it in a public meeting? Was it in a public meeting? Is it in the record somewhere?
I don't know exactly when it was done, but it was direction was given to the district manager at the time to go to license on permit 271, and to then change the EIR to reflect that.
Can you get back to me with a date?
I can try.
Okay.
It was a while ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't recently at all.
It was prior to this board.
Yeah, prior to this.
Long time prior to us.
Right.
And everybody agreed at the time to doing that.
But didn't we also reaffirm?
Then the drought came, and the state's offices were overwhelmed with work, and that's why the procedure was stopped for a couple of years there. Nothing happened.
So maybe this decision was made in somewhere mid-2012 before the EIR was started?
Before the drought.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
Because the staff was, we were told the
We can get
staff that
into
the
that
state was
more at
overwhelmed
the-
with work because of the drought.
So, was this request to go to license on permit 271 submitted? Was a document submitted to the State Water
It's ever
Board?
been submitted.
You just decided and didn't do anything?
No, we've had a meeting with the State Water Board, and that we have given them our indication that we are going to go to license with the permit, and that's what they understand the district has decided to do, was to go to license on that, and that's going to be their direction of how they handle our water rights permits. 271 is to not have an extension on that, but to go to license on that.
Okay, so the paperwork hasn't been drawn up yet?
The license has not been drawn up, but we are working with them to get all that affirmed. And there hasn't been really a draft done on the license, has there?
No, Paula Whalen offered water board staff to, draft a preliminary that they could start from.
Right.
But they didn't take her up on that. And just to kind of go back to your question about do we file paperwork, as I understand it, there is no such thing as an application for license. There's an application for extending permit, but I don't believe there's any such thing as an application for license. So it's kind of more a negotiation.
I see.
Aren't we kind of getting
This-
into what we're going to be
Yeah, we're going to be
discussing
talking
here
about that
Yeah.
later.
pretty soon anyway?
And
Also-
the other comment I had on that, and yeah, we can continue this, but the numbers here as far as the total contract for $306,000, of which 211 some has been paid, is different from what's on the website. And I'm just wondering why.
What's on the website, do you know?
Yeah, it says that the contract was for $350,000, not $306,000, and that only, let's see, $283,697 has been spent, leaving $66,303. So it's like $30,000 difference.
I'll take a look at the
Okay.
website.
And also with all of these, I hope that there are clear files, in case you get a public records request or someone wants to come in and look at each of these projects, that all the information is in the file. It'll be a lot easier in the future. When I come in and look at the water rights file, it's not complete. There's a lot that's not there, and Georgiana's having to look it all up. And so, it's very helpful to have all the correspondence in one file for all of these.
It's something staff can work on,
Yeah.
Robin, so.
Thank you, Robin.
Anyone else wish to speak? Thank you. Bring it back. If nobody has any further questions. Oh, that's information. Excuse me. Number 6.
Yeah, Treasurer's memo. I was out of town for most of the early portion of the month.
Yep.
I am actually working on getting the budget drafts together right now, collecting requests for capital projects or capital needs for district staff, and inputting those. So we should have some type of draft budget here shortly, so that I would believe the finance committee will take it to the finance committee for their first look at it, and then we'll give a draft or a budget workshop to the board, but the board will get a budget draft way before the budget workshop so that you can look at it and get any questions. But really, from an operational standpoint, we're right on budget. From the capital project side, the biggest one that we're seeing monies expended right now are the BRES design, but that is an SRF project, so as monies are being spent, we're getting reimbursed for those monies going out. It's about a 1-month lag, we see. So the last one was about 196,000 that we submitted for reimbursement, and we just got it like yesterday or 2 days ago.
We're using borrowed money to pay that, right?
Yep. Yeah. So
What interest rate are we paying on?
on that one, it's 0 until project is complete, and then it'll be about 1.5 to 1.7% for that project once it's all done. And remember, if we go from design to construction within 18 months, you don't pay anything on those monies still. So that's the big one. We're also paying monies towards the NPDES permit that we've paid about $50,000 towards that. And there's the contracts there, so you can kind of see where the monies are being spent. The de novo is still outstanding, and the Gentera, that one's the big one that we've been paying on. So,
Again, those are total numbers.
yeah, I gotcha. I see that. This is the year-to-date consumption. So we're about 300,000 over our consumption amounts from budget. So we're actually doing pretty good shape on the consumption side year-to-date. And we'll see how June and July, or May and June, pop out.
Yeah, water use is up. That's
Yep.
Any further questions, staff? Anybody in the public wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for action.
I move we accept the treasurer's memo.
Second that?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Number 7, approval of checks. Good. Well, you're starting to look, I'll read. Approval of general check fund numbers 51777 through 51890 for the month of April 2018, totaling $655,445.04. Authorization of similar amount following the or adjusting for extraordinary budget and board approval items during the month of May. And we don't have to read it. And I think I had a question. Oops, I'm sorry, Cliff.
There you go.
Thank you, sir. I did have a couple questions, and got my questions answered prior to the meeting. So,
Can I add one more thing to my district manager report I spaced on? That me and Director Wentland actually, and I appreciate him for making the contact, have a meeting scheduled with Assemblyman Daly and Gallagher, both together actually, which is great. This coming Monday at 10 a.m. at their office to discuss the spillway stuff and the state mandates that are coming on the district. Kind of getting an idea and maybe even talking about maybe getting a replacement for the dam and getting some 4-lane highway and just kind of getting kind of our project list out there so that they understand what we're having to what's being required on us and what kind of issues that we're facing. And so I do appreciate you making those contacts because they got back to me very quickly once you made those contacts.
yeah. Well, I've been talking to him for several months, and finally I just said, "Hey guys, I'm tired of talking. Let's do this."
And getting them both in the room at the same time, I think, would be very valuable.
Yeah.
Good idea.
We'll give you a feedback once we're done with that on how that went and what direction we're going to be heading on that. So, sorry to interrupt the checks.
No, that's okay. I think it'd be appropriate. If any of you have any specific questions, maybe for us prior to Monday, get your, fax it to him, email him questions. Even though I think the general idea of what we're going for is pretty clear. So,
Yeah. All right. Any check questions?
I just had a question on the paste supply. Those are the supplies for the Crestview project, right? That's what I figured. Okay.
We're bulking up for that one.
You're bulking up,
We're
okay.
starting to buy up.
Right. Okay.
I think we're getting more and more accustomed to looking at these, aren't we?
I had one question on page 54. What is Tyler Technologies?
That's our software for our accounting software, billing software, payroll, all that good stuff. It's the annual maintenance.
Thank you.
That's
If you ever need to borrow a rotor-rooter, I got a beautiful one.
for what?
It says Thrifty Rooter. I don't know what that was, but you can borrow mine.
$99.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where we.
What's the charge?
It's free.
I know, I'm just kidding.
I don't hire out. I just loan it to friends. It's a
No, that's
very nice unit, $1,600.
those things are
Can't read it.
good.
Can't read it.
Well, it appears as though we are no further questions. Anyone from the public have any comments, questions about this item? If none, bring it back to the board. Action, please.
Make a motion, we approve the checks, and you've already read the numbers.
Yep.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you. Legal report.
Yeah, last month I promised you an update on the Public Records Act suit, and I have one. You may recall that in October, the State Water Board produced some records, and then they also produced a privilege log. It's claiming that a number of these records were not subject to disclosure, citing a variety of privileges. We have been working to either get more information on the basis for the privilege or get disclosure of those records. And we recently filed a motion to compel production of approximately 500 of the withheld records. And that is set for hearing on June 1st. And as of this afternoon, we have yet to receive an opposition from the State Water Board. I imagine it's coming, but we don't have it yet. So I should be able to report back on this at the June meeting, but we are still working to obtain copies of those records, or at the very least get somebody to verify that they are in fact privileged.
I have a question in regards to the old issue concerning the twin tunnels, as the water fix, as they call it. And I know we had some representation in some various meetings that, and I'm curious, as it looks like that's going to happen, and there's not much we can do about it, have we resigned our fact to backing off from some of these costs related to showing up at these meetings, or is there still some reason for us legally to be involved in any of that?
You know, that's a good question. Dustin is handling that for you guys and a few of our other clients, and I haven't talked to him about it recently. I don't know what his attendance level looks like lately or where we're at, but I will check in with him and get you an update on that and see where we are and if you guys want to continue.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, it
No,
seems,
I understand the question, yeah.
yeah, it's if we're not going to, if nothing's going to come out of it, we might as well cut our losses and.
I think we're sharing the cost
You
with
are sharing the
several
cost.
agencies.
Multiple
Either
agencies.
17
Well,
or
right, we
22
are,
agencies.
but if the outcome is going to be, we're putting in the twin tunnels, we got the funding now, and there's nothing that we can do to keep that from happening. I'm not sure why we're continuing to represent opposition to that if it's going to happen anyway. Maybe we just take our marbles and move to another game.
Do you think the environmentalists are through fighting it, though?
I don't think anybody's through fighting it.
I didn't think so. I kind of thought that it was going to string
But
up
that
for-
doesn't mean that, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't answer Cliff's question as to whether it's meaningful for you guys to continue to participate. But
I mean, if it is,
it's not over.
right. But I mean, if there's a reason for us to still be in there, I'd
No.
like to have that explained. Otherwise, I think we ought to save our money for more important things and move on.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Having brought this up before, I agree with Cliff.
Yeah.
We should check and see if because we don't have the ability to sell any water out of this district.
Yeah.
Although it's been pointed out to me that the Miocene Canal might be a moneymaker for selling water to Southern California, but we don't have any ability here.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm glad you made that comment, but I did read that because we are an irrigation district in the special district guidelines for a water district, there is some verbiage in there, and I think we broached this once before, that says that if we have excess water that we can sell it if we so desire. And I know that gets a little complex without getting into the weeds about it, but is that really cut and dry that we can't sell water if we have a water right perfected? Because it's going to get into our conversation later on. If we have a perfected water right, and now we have that water available to us, and it's in excess of what we need, and we're an irrigation district, can we not legally sell it?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
The problem is that we have three water rights, right?
Yeah.
You have a pre-14 water right that is a direct diversion water right that we use. We use it up. So there's no access. A lot of these guys like Richvale and Western and all those, they have pre-14 water rights. The water board can't tell them what to do with their water. The problem is our excess water comes through our permits and the 271 license that we're trying to go to. They have a say over that because those were enacted after the Department of Water Resources was established, so post 14 rights. So that's the issue that we have, and that's why we're asking to look at the place of use. So that's what's restricting us right now is our place of use on that permit is within those boundaries of what we're at. Therefore, we can't sell our water because we don't have the right to sell our water. We don't have the right to use our water outside of our boundaries.
And
so
desire to expand our
right.
sphere of influence.
And then we're not the sphere, the place of use.
Place of use, okay.
Right. So that's what we're trying to expand within that license when we're going to license on that 271 is that we're trying to expand that place of use so we have the ability to sell water. Our place of use isn't going to be Southern California, so we're not going to be able to sell it to Southern California, but maybe we can sell it to our neighbors in their times of needs that they need the water.
Such as Cal Water.
Or Del Oro, both sides.
They're the
First one, yeah.
Right. So that's the reason why we're restricted.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? Okay. Number 9, unfinished business. We like those that are empty pages. 10A. And Kevin, would you like to lead us into this one?
So you can come up to the podium, Robin. Robin Huffman was wanting to have answers about the EIR that was never completed, that was started, or the notice was started. Biological study was completed, and then we're changing it up based on permit versus license, which you guys know that, and the sphere of influence that was included in that notice to proceed portion of the EIR. And so she has put together an agenda item, which our rules and regs allow for a public member to put an agenda item on there with consent from myself or from the president. And so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and I do appreciate this opportunity to have something on the agenda. And my purpose really today is to gain more clarity going forward. You know, I don't have all the resources to put together a staff report myself. You know, I did the best I could, but there are a lot of things, materials I don't have. And really, you should be asking for them. And that's the purpose of this. My hope is that you will be asking for staff to do the math, present it to you in a way where we can have a conversation about possible alternatives instead of just jumping right into an EIR process.
Before we get into this, I don't want to interrupt you in the middle of it, but I want to compliment you on bringing this, an agenda item that is concern to you, to the board in the appropriate manner instead of just getting up and railing about how terrible we are in some of the things that we do. You actually took the time to put it together and put it on the agenda so it could be discussed in both directions.
Right, and none of you are terrible. No one's terrible. It's just there's not enough information all in one place. And it'd be helpful for this board, future boards, and obviously the public, and I think even the State Water Board would appreciate more clarity. I mean, it just seems going through the record that in some ways we're kind of stringing them along and saying, yeah, we're doing something and we're not really doing anything. And do we really want to engage in dam building for real? We have to make it real for the State Water Board to approve these extensions and whatever else you want to ask them for. So I encourage PID to keep it simple, and expanding the place of use is fine. Kevin provided all these maps. The first one, and I don't know if you want to jump straight to the maps, but the first one we saw in the water rights presentation in February. And that shows a place of use that includes Paradise Lake and McGilly Reservoir and much of Magalia. But again, I don't think that the board was ever presented this map at any point before Paula presented it in this water. And it's, it's just the way that things are happening. It's how much should staff be doing for the board, with the consultants and as they're talking to the State Water Board, and how much should the board be actually in control of the process. And it just seems to me that a map like this should be presented to the board for acceptance. That would be a simple action item that just didn't happen. It's just like, oh, here's the thing that we're sending to the State Water Board,
May I ask staff a question right here?
Mm-hmm.
Who originated this map, and when was this officially
2012?
Placed?
Was it
'Cause
revised?
It was presented to us as
Yeah.
as a kind of here's where it is.
2012.
Okay, that's the reason. Yeah, it was already
Well,
done.
this map was not in 2012,
Oh.
not this one. This is a different map than is on the website. You've got two maps on the website. One of them's in here, and that's the next page.
Looks similar.
The one thing these maps show is that we had interest in buying at one time Magalia when I first got on the board, and that didn't go through. And then we talked about buying Del Oro below us, and that didn't go through either. And the sphere of influence across the bottom of the district, I think that was because of opposition within the community. I don't know if it ever went ahead or not, because some people didn't want to be in our sphere of influence below the boundary, our boundary on the south.
So if I could, Bill, just go through some of this, and then you all hopefully will have a nice discussion. But I don't want to try to read this whole thing. I hope you've had some time to look
We've all
through
read
it.
I'm sure.
But I did try to include some history, and one of the things that happened is the EIR process stopped, and somewhere maybe mid-2012, March 2012, something was kind of interesting in the meeting minutes, and so I listened. I requested a tape, an audio, because it wasn't in the agenda packet, wasn't in the minutes. There was just a reference that sounded like maybe something important was discussed. Maybe the EIR was stopped for a certain reason. Well, I didn't get my answer, but in March 2012, it seems that the EIR process was still going forward. And I made a transcript. I can provide it to you if you want, but the manager at the time, George Barber, said to the board, I received the draft biological assessment report and have reviewed and commented back. As we move forward on the project, I will provide further information to the board on the findings. So that's March 2012. He's still talking about moving forward on the project, going forward with the EIR, which hasn't been started. You've got a draft biological assessment, biological resources report. He commented on it. The board, as far as I know, never saw those comments. And it wasn't presented to the board. It wasn't in the packet. And so you still have a draft. And De Novo hasn't commented back. It's just that. That's all. You've got a draft. A lot of the conversation is unintelligible. Couldn't hear it in the audio. And confusing. And that's because there wasn't a decent staff report. It's so important to have a detailed staff report to have a decent discussion. Barbara also said, the Water Rights Board has hinted to Paula Whelan that our water rights engineers, it's fuzzy, that we should go to license on that earlier permit, that we don't have to have an extension for that particular permit, and it would come out of the CEQA process and all that. It's kind of a dicey question when they ask that, kind of wondered their motivating factor. We hope that all it is one of the oldest permits that they have. So Dustin and Paula and Neil and I are working on getting the information to support that thought process. Then the proposal in front of them. I think we have this solid foundation to have a full permit, rights to license, something, so that we will have to finalize that letter, meeting with them, staff level and proposal, and get their feedback without assuming an official board position. So it's in March that Paula Whelan and Neil and George and Dustin were talking to the State Water Board, and the State Water Board is telling them to go to license instead of doing the EIR for the extensions. And so it just seems like maybe it's in April that the process was stopped. I don't know. It's not in the record.
Can I ask you a
But it
question?
wasn't because of the drought, because we're in 2012. The first dry year is 2013. And they're already saying to go to license.
Actually, to Kevin, you state in 2011 the PID board contracted with De Novo Planning Group to complete an environmental impact report by 2012. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so we did enter in a contract with them to create the EIR.
Correct.
Okay. Was the EIR itself ever started?
It was the portion, yes. So there was never an EIR completed, but the steps to get to an EIR were started.
So the background environmental report that Robin is referring to was the beginning basis for a baseline.
Yeah, notice
to
to
show
proceed. Yeah.
to mitigate any changes after we got the baseline to go forward with the EIR. So we never got past that background study?
The biological report, correct.
Okay, so the thing that everybody's referring to as a draft EIR is actually just the biological study, and we stopped the process before we started the EIR.
We didn't stop the process, as far as I know. The way I read this whole thing is the regional board. We're waiting for a response from the regional board. Or not regional board, excuse me, water board.
Yeah,
water board.
Up to today, from 2012 till today.
Correct. So that's what's held this up. It's not that we stopped anything. The board was sitting here waiting for a response from the water board.
Yeah, so
We're still waiting for a response.
well, we've restarted the process. That's why we're here today.
Yeah.
Because we then reached out after the drought was over. We as a district reached out back to them and says, hey, can we get a sit down with you guys to restart this process?
Well, somebody told De Novo to stop, and it wasn't the State Water Board. Somebody told them to
Can I
stop.
speak to this? I'm the only person left.
You were probably the only one here
The only one here.
when it happened.
Yeah.
So you might be responsible for this.
So how do you understand it then?
Then I have a copy of that report. Ann has a copy of it. It's available, and you have one too. Yeah. It's available to you.
We all have a copy of that,
Okay,
Bill.
you all
We have a copy.
now.
Yeah.
Now, the way it got stopped was what I started to say earlier tonight, is that basically we ran into the drought, and the drought curtailed the efforts by the state, because they had to put all their efforts into doing Hurricane Brown with all the different things on how to stop the drought. Well, they didn't increase manpower, they didn't increase budgets, they just laid all this work on them. So basically our little thing was just put off to one side, because it's not a great issue, actually. As long as they keep letting us pull the water out and use it as we have in the past, we're all right. But because there are some questions about whether these water rights are good or not. So in a way, it's just as well that they're dragging their feet.
Well, the big deal now is that you're going to engage in an EIR process and spend money. And so I just think we need to have a discussion with all the information from the staff before that EIR process is indeed started. You need to have some information in front of you. And this EIR was supposed to be completed, 100% done, approved,
Long time ago.
By
everything
2012,
by the end of 2012.
No,
This is
it didn't happen.
that was the contract, though.
You found it out. It definitely didn't happen, and it was not a priority of the board because of the drought regulations and everything. And Neil's, there's a president I always liked. He was a Congregationalist, but he was a silent cow. And so Neil sometimes affects me that way. So I'm going to ask Neil if he has anything to say about this, because you were directly involved in it, much more so than I was.
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't speak to the issues of what transpired with the board, because as Bill can probably attest, I don't attend a lot of board meetings. I do sometimes, depending on what's on the agenda and if I'm asked to do so. But as far as the interactions with the water board, it was a very slow process. Even before the drought, it was very slow. Paula Whalen alluded to the fact that they have hundreds of applications and they process very few every year. So they've got a major backlog, and they're not doing very well to cope with that. So that's part of the issue. And then when we worked with the water board, we try to get a meeting. Well, you might get a meeting, you might not get a meeting. It might take 6 months to get a meeting. Then you'd have a meeting, and then things wouldn't really move forward the way you might think that they were going to when the meeting happened, because there'd be some kind of delays. I was involved in fairly lengthy analyses that looked at our water use historically. And it took a long time to get a response after those analyses were submitted. I don't know the time frame, but I'm guessing it was somewhere in the order of 4 or 5 years. Well, that's the way this process works from my perspective. It works very slowly. So then when something comes along like the drought, and they're on fire and they're going in a different direction, everything just completely comes to a stop. You can't even get an answer to a question about, well, should we be going in this direction or that direction?
Well, they gave, I think,
where we were at.
I suspect that they gave very clear direction not to proceed with the EIR because there's not enough storage and there's not enough water usage. I mean, that's kind of the discussion here from the March meeting. I can read a little bit more if you want, but it was all about storage. Yeah. We don't have enough, and usage, we're not using enough. So that's why the process was stopped. I understand the State Water Board is slow, but they were telling you to go to permit, and it's not worth your effort to do this EIR. That's just my guess.
I think you're reading between the lines here.
Yeah, I am.
I can answer.
Well, I don't know for Emily, but Dustin had talked about that, about the drought and movement on the whole water rights process coming.
Right, and I recall one of those conversations when we were here, and it had to do with the fact that in order to perfect our water rights, we had to show a certain amount of water usage in a certain time frame, and we were holding off because that would have thrown us into the area when we conserved during the drought, which would have made us look worse and would not have perfected good water rights for us. And that was one of the reasons I believe that we put off the process.
Yeah, well, and the other thing too is that, and Neil, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was kind of an evolution. We looked at our water rights, and then Neil went deep into the weeds of these calculations of what truly was our water right and how they were used and what was being used out of those water rights. And as that evolution came about, we were saying, okay, this is what our first water right is, direct diversion, and at some point during times of years, we're actually violating this water right. So therefore, we need to ask the water board for change on that one specifically. The second one was, how does permit 271 work? And we looked at that one, and we were saying that we were maximizing that permit 271. So according to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but under the conversation with Paula, George, Neil, was, well, why not go to license on that at this point? There's no reason for permit to continue the permit, and it's one of the oldest permits in the State Water Board. And then the other permit, we're trying to prove out, yes, we do want this. We want to continue this permit. We want this extension of this permit. The one thing with that permit is, according to, and this is again the evolution of the calculations, is we haven't even used a drop of water under that permit. And there might have been a little bit when we filled or something like that, but based how the permit reads, there wasn't even water used under that permit. So there is some type of proving out that we do want to continue that permit, that we want to use that eventually, and that we have a need for that eventually into the future. So that's kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the evolution of the thought process of how things went about.
Yeah.
Yes, and actually, the water board staff told us that they were not really sure that they would consider extending permit 271.
Right.
I mean, they kind of brought up the licensure
Yeah, he
issue
wanted
first.
to go to
I
license.
think. They kind of said, you're our oldest permit, and you've had plenty of time to perfect this, and we're not even sure if we're going to entertain that idea, so you should be thinking about licensing this.
Yeah.
And so then we looked at what does licensing mean, and actually it's probably the right thing to do based on the numbers that we've seen and what we need to accomplish.
You know, Robin, you've got an awful lot of stuff here, issue overview and everything. I read all this and took a lot of notes, and I commented on areas that I thought maybe need to be clarified. I wonder if, for the sake of getting through this, if maybe I could hit some of these highlights and then
Sure.
ask for just a quick, direct yes or no, or that's something we need to look at. Because you said in your issues overview, you said, until PID demonstrates that it has the money to build more storage to hold the amount of water for which PID is requesting rights, it cannot increase its firm yield and cannot retain the water rights requested. So I'm curious, if we can show the need, do we still need to show the ability to fund it in order to obtain those rights? Do you know the answer to that?
No, I don't believe that there's, I mean, you're talking future.
Yeah.
Right, but what I'm saying is,
Sphere of influence doesn't mean
what I'm
construction.
saying is that if we can prove that there's a future need for it, do we have to show the ability to fund it for them to perfect that for us?
I don't believe that
Okay.
that's one of the...
Well, that's not quite accurate, because
You have
the
to show that
State
you-
Water Board did send us a letter pretty recently that, well, what's the progress? Are you building it? And you need to see the letters from the State Water Board.
We've had to sit down with them on the State Water Board, and that was the two different issues also.
Okay. You said it is increasingly unlikely that the state will allow Magalia Reservoir to be filled to its prior full capacity. And that's true unless we can get improvements by grant funding, which is something that we actively want to pursue. So we don't want to not have those rights in place and then get the grant funding to put in a new road and fix the dam and then say, what's the use? We don't have the water rights to use it anyway. So I think looking ahead, we got to look at that.
Yes.
So,
Can I comment on that thing there? Because Bureau of Dam Safety has declared that dam as one of the most
High
unsafe.
hazard.
We know that.
Oh, yes, but that
Right.
also meant that we can't fix it. We have to build a new dam.
Reconstruct.
Okay, the old board went through it, and the estimate on building the new dam, it's been estimates. It started out around 10 million. I think the last one I saw was 30 million or
Right.
something. And so, but we don't have the water rights to fill a new dam. And so we have to get the water rights straightened out before we can make any long-range plans on increasing our storage capacity.
Yeah.
And part of the water rights, or the one that always was curious to me, is that some of the water rights, and I don't remember exactly which one, it restricts us to only having the water flow through the dams and not holding it back.
Storage.
Yep.
It's
And
diversion.
so I don't
Yep.
remember which one of that is, but that also has to get resolved.
Right, that's something that's going to be
Yep.
later on in your thing here.
Yep.
But so you said if the plant has capacity, informed consent of the PID customers for an ambitious water rights project would need to include an analysis of the potential costs for water treatment. Additional quantities of water treatment would also affect the water quality permitting, since additional chemicals and compounds of environmental concern would be produced by treating the water. First of all, I think, and correct me again if I'm wrong, and Neil might know, the cost per gallon to treat actually goes down as more water is treated in cost per gallon per customer. And we do have the excess capacity at our water treatment plant without enlarging it for far more water than we're processing currently. And again, like I said, we have fixed costs. But the variable cost based on larger volumes of water, it actually gets
Cheaper.
less expensive when we produce more of it. So therefore, if we did increase that volume, it wouldn't cost our customers more. It would actually cost them less to use more water. So I just want to point that out, unless I'm wrong on that.
That's right.
You're right.
That's right.
But the amount of chemicals would be more.
No, because cycles of concentration, the flow through would be greater, and so there would be no increase in cycles of concentration of the background pollutants,
Okay.
because it would be diluted by the increased flow going through it.
So,
correct, Neil?
you've done a quick analysis here.
Right.
But there's nothing in
Yeah,
writing.
no.
There's nothing in the history.
And I just wanted to, and don't get me wrong, I appreciate everything you put down, and I know you spent a lot of time on it. I just wanted to clarify these because so many times something doesn't get clarified, and later on it gets misconstrued out of context, and then people say we didn't address it properly. I want to make sure we're all in agreement that everything on there is addressed properly,
Right,
and
and-
that you go away with the answers you're looking for.
Well, I would like it addressed properly in a staff report when it comes back to the board.
Great, and then we'll know what to prioritize
Yeah.
based on what we can resolve here
Yeah, and
now, I think.
that's all I'm asking for.
Excellent. I appreciate that.
I've got a brief comment, if I might. Having worked with other organizations that produce EIRs, if for some reason this had ever even been completed, if and when the state finally gets around to getting to us, 2 years, 10 years from now, whatever, that EIR would be pretty much useless anyway, wouldn't it?
Could be stale.
Yeah, because they have a short shelf life. And so I think we can be glad that it wasn't done.
Right, and the new EIR process will consider that you're going to license on permit 271, and it'll affect, you'll have to resubmit your applications for extension and all
Gotta
of
start
that.
all over again
Right.
almost.
And so
Yeah.
that's what I would expect to see. It just couldn't, it might not be that difficult to fill out the paperwork, the application, it's a front and a back. Before you, propose this is what we're going to do before you start your EIR,
And I wonder, based on that, if we're going to hire a firm to do an EIR, and we're going to do it for this area versus this area, is there really that much more expense
Not really.
related in expanding that sphere of influence
Well,
or
an
the
environmental-
area that we serve?
An environmental impact report looks at the total project and the effect on the total project area on the environment and all the other components. And, a sphere of influence for the town is one thing, but a sphere of influence for
Water district.
a water district is different because, the town has land and the land is there. With the water district, it's all about water. And is the water really there? Is it just paper water? And so I think it requires more analysis, whether it's sphere of use or place of use. And so I want to see the analysis instead of just hearing a manager's report and then kind of getting your consent, and then you can say we, and there's no report. You need to, if you're going to give consent, it needs to be not information only. It needs to be agendized for action.
Thank you, Robin.
If,
And just like Cliff said earlier, I was going to say it anyway, and that is we appreciate the information very
Absolutely.
much and keeping us alert and open and
in this sphere of influence, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dan, but in this sphere of influence, if we, and again, if I'm wrong, correct me, because, I certainly don't know it all. If we don't ask for a specific area in our permit process, and then later on we find out that we needed that area, we're gonna be hard pressed to get it. Conversely, if we ask for more than what we need, and we are given that, is that not, whether or not we utilize that or not, is that not to our betterment?
So, remember, we have two different things. Sphere of influence is through LAFCO. It's a line for government agencies to say this is what we potentially could be serving into the future. And then we have place of use. That's where we're saying this is where our water is allowed to go type
Right,
of thing.
but we can't have a place of use that's not in our sphere of influence.
No, they're two different separate things.
Right.
Completely. So you can have a place of use without the sphere of influence.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay.
LAFCO, so yeah, they're not joined here. The reason why we did it was because LAFCO pushed us back in, I believe, 2008 to update our sphere of influence because our sphere was only our boundaries. And they were asking for governments to go and look further out so that they could get kind of this conjoined areas so that governments weren't fighting each other and this and that. And remember, just because we have a sphere of influence, we have an annexation process that anybody that wants to come into our boundaries must be annexed in, which means they must bring their own water source. And that's through payment of...
So really this map and this increased area has nothing to do with our water rights then?
Not the sphere of influence.
Okay.
So the sphere of influence was, and we started this process, and we thought it was just going to be a negative deck. But at the time, there was a lot of questions that came out, and there was... and at the time, Walmart was trying to go into to that little spot down there on the map.
Split on Skyway.
Yeah,
It was taken out?
right there, which is and so there was just a lot going on that we thought, and agencies were asking for an EIR, do an EIR in your sphere, and we go, well, let's hold off because we know we're going to do an EIR over here, so let's combine the two. So that's why the sphere is combined into this water rights renewal EIR, is because we were in the process of doing both that needed an EIR for both of the projects.
Thank you.
It's been along that line because you were right going that direction. I was on LAFCO for a few years, and they do encourage you, and they always take preference to the nearest entity. And so there was a time when I was on LAFCO too, other towns, municipalities were saying, okay, then we think that our town is most likely to grow here. And so they have first whack at it, so to speak. Because if somebody else ever wanted this, they would have to get our approval, our permission. And we can back up. We have the alternative in the future of saying, okay, you can have it, we don't need it.
So it doesn't hurt us any.
It doesn't hurt.
Got it.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to do.
Okay. And there was only one other item I thought maybe we need some clarification on. You said the introduction to the Biological Resources Draft Report provides data to pencil out the math, but storage needs of the proposed water rights project, saying the combined permitted storage capability of both reservoirs is 18,000 acre feet, 15.5 for Paradise and 2,800 for Magalia, but the district's current actual storage capacity is 12,000 and some odd. And so basically you're saying a PID must attain 6,000 additional acre feet of storage capacity for what's permitted or what we're asking to permit. But I think, and again, Neil, you can probably speak to this one, because that complex thing about the flow through not pulling down the reservoir or the lake itself, in other words, we have to have some capacity. We can't just draw down the lake. And so having those water rights perfected to be able to pull that runoff, regardless of the capacity of both reservoirs, is important, and I think that plays into the permit, doesn't it?
That's into the change of use on the direct diversion right, which we have as the pre-14 right.
Okay, because I just thought that needed some clarification, because that was a little confusing there. It's like, well, you already got more than what you need, so why are you asking for more? And I think that's the reason, because if that lake were only half its size, we still have the same issue. We can't pull it down. So, okay.
So just for your edification too, the reason why you guys haven't got a proposal back to start this EIR is because we're fleshing out all the issues before we start the EIR and before we issue the new notice. So we're basically starting from scratch, but we're hoping that we're starting from scratch, being able to use some of the scratch we already did. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're looking at, is how much more biological studies are going to be required. What additional, are we going to have to do a whole new biological thing, or are we going to be able to have to update a few, or are we going to just be able to rely on the biological draft report that's already been done? That's what we're fleshing out, so that when he comes to you as the board, you can have all the facts in your face that you can make a positive decision on going forward with this EIR and how you want to go forward with that EIR. But that's what we're fleshing out at this point.
And this does bring up, I'd like to make one comment on this. Quite a few board meetings back, we commented, I think Ann commented and I commented, that why do we keep putting this redundant stuff that's not going anywhere on the agenda and on the staff reports and on the water treatment? We have all this stuff, and it's like, nothing's changed, just take it off. But this is a good reason why we can't, and we shouldn't, because when you look back and you don't see it there anymore, you say, well, what happened? I didn't see any action. Because we said, until something changes, leave it off your report. And then you go to that report and you go, I see what they did here, but it just stopped and there's nothing after that. And that could be a reason why. So maybe that's a lesson to us to make sure that even though it seems redundant and old news, that we have a status to look at every board meeting so that we can say, hey, where are we at on that?
Well, you're right. It's redundant. For months and months, there was the same 2-3 sentences on water rights, and
then all of a sudden it
Nothing was
disappeared.
happening.
well, but when it was on there, you couldn't tell what was said about it.
That's because nothing was done. We were in holding pattern,
It was in
waiting.
limbo, yeah.
And I think, and as long as when there is something that happens, that the staff puts that on their report, that
Right.
it's updated.
And I think that's all that's needed. If nothing happened, it doesn't need to be on there. Then I don't have to wonder if something was said at the meeting.
So you'd prefer it not be on
I'd
there?
prefer it's not there.
We would
unless
rather
there's-
too.
Well, then I stand corrected. I mean, that, as long as we have a way of auditing where we're at on it, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
Kevin might prefer it too. All he has to do is say, no further progress. Next item, no further progress.
I like keeping it on there because it does give, it's a major project. It's a major project of the district that every month we need to say, where are we at, where are we at, where are we at? And if we're not anywhere, at least we know where we're not there, but at least we know that that's still on the front of the mind of the district, that it hasn't been just pushed into the weeds.
Robin, you have kept our feet to the fire, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, when the CIR comes back, there needs to be a no project alternative. There always is a no project alternative.
Yeah, there is.
And right now on the website, it says there is no alternative to this project. But there is. The size of the project, there are alternatives to it. And that's what I want you to consider. Well, what else can we do other than repeat what we did last time that the state told us, don't do that? So.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wish to speak to this item? Thank you. All right.
I'd like to ask for a break.
Okay, we will take a 5-minute break. Thank you, Bill. Okay, 10B. Is Neil going to be
Yep.
presenting for us? Please come forward, Neil.
I'll kind of give you a background. The town is going to be tearing up Almond Street all the way down, putting electrical underneath, everything, phone, they're going to do everything underneath. We have old steel pipe down there, and we feel it's in the best interest of the district to replace that steel before they get in there and replace the road. One of the items that we were looking at was the design of the pipe. And being that there's going to be multiple agencies in there, that we felt that it would be best to get an outside engineer to do the design of that lay of that pipe. We contacted the town, and the town had already hired an engineer to do all of the survey work and the design work too. So what we were going to do is, we didn't know if they were capable of doing the water system itself. So we were going to have an outside agency do the water and then just rely on their survey. But then when Neil contacted them, they felt comfortable doing the water system themselves. So we felt that it was in the best interest of the district to actually just sole source that design work directly to that firm, being that they've already done all of the survey work. And Neil contacted them, and I can kind of allow Neil to take it from there.
Well, there's not much.
Thank you, Neil.
You've seen the number that they've come up with. It seems quite competitive compared to other requests for proposals that we put out in the past to have a project like this engineered. as Kevin mentioned, the coordination of this project is really key. There's going to be PG&E doing a lot of work in there. The town's going to be doing a lot of work. And it's unlikely that our old steel main would not suffer a fair amount of damage due to the full depth reclamation work that the town is doing to construct this street section. So we really feel like it's time for the Almond Street main to be replaced, even though, we kind of tried to avoid it, but it's probably not prudent to try to avoid it with all that work going on. So with the same engineer designing this, that's designing the town's work, and it seems quite competitively priced, and they should be able to turn it out faster, we offer you a sole source as an option for doing this.
It makes so much sense to use the same company.
Yeah, this came up at our last board meeting, and after that I reached out to Lauren Town and the engineer and got the update on that, and that's pretty much what they said. They were gonna get in touch with PID, and so you did. Everybody followed through.
Yeah, Mark called me, and then
Yeah.
Mark then got in touch with you, or you were in touch with Mark before me. But yeah, we were in touch with the town.
Yeah.
What size is the pipe?
8-inch.
8-inch?
Yes.
The existing pipe is 8-inch?
The existing pipe is 8-inch, and we propose to replace it in the same size.
Same size, okay.
And this $35,000 is just for the design of the project.
That's correct.
And so who will be doing the construction?
That would be going out to bid. After we have
Put
the
an
design,
RFP on it.
we'll go out.
Okay,
That's going to be above our ability to
okay.
put it in.
Well, certainly our crew could do it. It's not an ideal project for us because it has a fair amount of traffic on Almond Street. But we could do it, but we're already committed to other projects that pretty much are maxing out our forces, so we really need to outsource this one.
Okay.
Yeah, we discussed it, and we were already committed over to the Crestwood project, and we're looking at a very timely project here that we're trying to get done in a short amount of time. Because we're competing with others out there. So I believe PG&E is supposed to be done by July 1st of 19 is what their deadline is, and we want to try to coordinate to make sure that we're not running over the top of each other through that process.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight timeline.
Is there a phasing for the project, Neil? Like, in other words, water's first and then gas and then...
I think whoever gets there first gets to put the underground stuff in.
Number one.
Everybody wants to be ahead of the town with their surface improvements.
Okay.
But yeah, the underground is going to just be whoever gets there first.
Okay.
And we have two other underground projects we're going to be doing in the same project area. We have the Black Olive Drive from from Cedar to Fir, and we have Birch Street from Almond to Black Olive.
Right
So
there.
those two segments are something that we're going to be building with our own forces, and we've already in-house designed plans for those. But then this one, we tried to avoid the inevitable, but I think it's the right thing to do to just see it through.
Are they undergrounding utilities on those side streets too, or just Almond?
Actually, the undergrounding is a little bit different footprint than the town's project, but for the most part, it coincides quite closely. They will be doing underground work on Birch, Foster, Fir.
Yeah, because it seems it
Doesn't
wouldn't make
quite
any
align.
sense to have poles for a block and a half and then everything else underground.
Yeah.
Would it make any sense to reach out to whatever contractors have the bid in place for the rest of the work that's going to be being done there? Is that something that we can
Piggyback on
get in there with and get that done possibly when they've already got the ground open? And
It's possible. It really remains to be seen when we're ready to go out to bid, when other contractors are bid on the project. We just don't know what these other timelines are going to look like.
But I mean, is there a possibility we can contact some of these contractors that already have those jobs in place and see if that's something that we can go to them with and save having to go out on a complete, new process?
I think that's possible.
I mean, we might get a better price if they're already there on the job
We
doing
can send
it.
them an RFP.
I was
if
gonna
necessary.
say,
Yeah.
we'll send, yeah, it would make sense to send.
Sure,
them
kind of that
notice
one dig policy. I mean, they're already there. Why?
We
Why
can send them
not?
an RFP and then they can price it based on their
Sure.
ability.
They might not do it directly, but they might have subs that they can use, that they work with, that can coordinate that work while they're in progress.
Yeah, because
That's what I would expect, is that probably a contractor that would get the town's project would be a granite construction, someone like that. They're probably going to subcontract the underground work for PID.
They will,
if were
but
to-
how soon is this project
next
starting?
summer it says 19.
19?
I can't tell you what the town's time frame is for bidding their project.
But I wonder,
bidding, I'm sorry,
do we
I
have
missed
time
that
to,
For the town or for us?
for us to go out and find the contractors that the town is using and see if we can coordinate with them?
Get your contact with Mark.
Well, we can find out. I believe that they'll tell us who they're using for their. I don't. But the thing is for their underground. A lot of the underground is going to be PG&E. PG&E. We're assuming is going to do their own work. AT&T is going to do their own work.
I was going to say that earlier, because there are generally companies that specialize more in water. Vicinoni gets a lot of water bids because that's their thing.
Yeah,
You know,
So who's going to open up the ground?
each one.
we are. We're going to open up the ground, and we have to probably do some type of patch over the top before they come in and tear our patch out.
Do we,
That's my point. Why?
is engineering to the point where we know where each one of these underground services are?
That's what.
And mapped out on the roads or anything like that?
We've seen preliminary plans from PG&E. We don't have their final plans. And we have plans, again, not final plans for the town's work as well. They're going to be doing storm drain, and that's going to be, I think, the extent of their underground work. But, yeah, there's going to be a lot of underground work happening up there.
That's what Thomas will do.
Personally, PG&E just put in a gas line across the street where my trucks have to go every day, and it sucks. The way they filled it, a 5-year-old kid could have done a better job, and it's already sunk in. And this was just 2 weeks ago.
The other question I have, years ago, when I first got on the board, we had a project that went out to bid, and George had the crew bid the same thing. In other words, what we could cost to do the job. And it was explained to me that the reason I asked for the size of the pipe, that's something like 10 or 12-inch pipe, we want somebody else to do it. But underneath that, the 8-inch, we could probably do it. Is there anything where we might have a competitive bid from the field staff against, we can compare with the contractors? Because the other thing we'll probably run into, the way the economy's booming and everybody's working, and I'm going, I'm glad to see you're planning so far ahead, because we don't know what's going to be going on in a year or so from us as far as how busy contractors are, outside contractors, where they might not be able to get there, and we actually might be able to get there quicker, depending on the circumstances and everything. So,
Well, I think in answer to your question, if we thought that our district crews could do it, we wouldn't even be thinking about outsourcing it.
okay.
Because it would just be, it would be something that would be in complete control. But we've already got as much bid off as we can conceivably chew, I think. And so now the question is, well, are we going to set some other project aside that we've already initiated? I don't think we want to do that.
My thought is that the contractors that do this type of work might be in the same situation.
They might, and if that's the situation that we encounter when we go out to bid, then we're going to have to think hard about what do we do now.
We don't have to accept an RFP,
Well,
but we can still put them out.
I think we should make some effort. I know it may be late in the game, but we should make some effort to coordinate with these other utilities and or the town and see if there's some way that we can put this program together. That makes sense to me.
But and we will. We'll find out who they're using. The amount of coordination that you've gotten from the town is kind of what you're seeing right now. Is who did your work, and we're going to go and contract with them ourselves. So they're not looking to partner with us by a money standpoint, because they were very clear with us that their package was already completed, and they don't want to muck up their package. So we're able to kind of piggyback off of some of their contractors, which we'll find out who's doing their underground.
Well, and like I was saying, maybe PG&E, maybe the town's set, but PG&E has a cost, and if we open up the ground and they're able to do their thing while we're there,
I think PG&E
Very,
doesn't care.
very unlikely.
Start at
Uncooperative.
I actually would like to make a motion
Okay.
where we can get off of this.
Sure.
So, accept the proposal for professional engineering services from Mark Thomas and Company Incorporated for engineering design services for the Almond, you understand, that's the right way to say it.
Oh, of course.
Street water main replacement project for a not-to-exceed amount of $35,000 and direct the interim district manager to execute the professional services agreement following review by legal counsel. After this, I don't know what you're going to review, Emily. It seems to cover everything. Or provide direction to staff for negotiations changes to the proposal.
You can drop that last
Drop
part of the
that last
sentence
part.
off.
Okay.
Just stop at council.
Yeah, just
And we
stop at
have a
council.
second, but if I do what I'm supposed to
second.
do, we got 2 seconds. I really technically should open it to the public first so we can come back and take an action, but is there anybody from the public that wishes to make a comment on this?
Yes, thank you. I was at the town council meeting when the two representatives of the Butte Regional Transit Authority came to make this presentation. Their first choice was at the Triangle across the street from Classic Auto Body. The public rejected that, and the town agreed with the public. So this was an interim choice, and it actually turns out to be better for us. At the conclusion of that, they said, and this won't cost your community anything. It's all grant money provided by the county. Maybe we should be asking, can we get some of that grant money for our project as part of this regional transit location?
Thanks, Ward.
maybe you could work on that for us.
That's interesting. You got connections at town hall? Go for it. Anybody else from the public? All right, bring it back to the board for the continuation of the action. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. C. Kevin.
Yep, so long time waiting. We finally got response back from the Boating and Waterways on the grant and the questions associated with the grant proposal agreement. And remember, the agreement, we've already signed the agreement. The board's already signed the agreement. So this is more of a backing out of that agreement if we're going forward with that agreement at this point, based on living with what the responses they gave us on that agreement. So it's not like we're negotiating that agreement at this point. The agreement's already in place. So we met with the ad hoc committee that was created for that agreement, and that ad hoc committee was made up of
Ann and me.
Ann and Dan. And they reviewed the question and answer section of the response and made a recommendation that the district not go forward with the agreement based on some of the restrictions that are inside of that agreement that they're not going to
Relent on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing was that we had a 20-year term that you're going to be required to live by these rules for 20 years. My recommendation was either it was kind of either get on board with it and understand that these are the restrictions that you're going to be living with and that you have $670,000 of free money, or get off the train at this point. This is a good time to either get on and know that you're on for the long haul, or step off and decide not to take that train. So
Ann and my recommendation is pound sand, because the restrictions are still quite severe. And if there's any infraction, we pay them back the whole thing.
Well, I remember Ann had a problem with quite a few points on there, and they're
Did.
not willing to compromise on any of those?
No,
Some
a couple
of
of them they were,
Some
but,
of them they
but
did.
most of the majority, no.
No?
It's just too much liability. All the legal liability is ours. And even if, they even have a paragraph in there that if you do a breach and we don't call you on it first, that doesn't mean that we can't come back and get you later, and you have to pay us back $670,000 or fix the breach and whatever it was. I mean, it was just too onerous. We give up complete control.
Yeah.
And
It becomes their lake.
I didn't see
not
any
ours.
money in there to operate, just to maintain, but not for you know, for the reservoir keepers, the patrol and all that, all of it has to be documented for maintaining and repairing.
Yeah.
And then we had to reduce our fees because they wouldn't accept that. We had to reduce fees. And it just was, and we had to pass an ordinance if we
Over a
wanted the
period of
gas.
20 years, we would have gone significantly in the hole with that lake project every year, so.
I don't think we have to reduce our fees, isn't that right?
$2. I would,
$2.
just based on,
You.
right now what we do is we charge $10 for a boat and a kayak, but a second kayak is
It just say you have to
$5.
reduce them.
So you would probably, just to stay in compliance, there's no question, you'd probably reduce that second kayak from a $5 fee
Yeah.
to a
Right.
$3
So-
fee.
But it does say we will have to
Okay,
reduce.
well, I
They
mean,
have the
that's pretty
control.
minor.
Yeah, that was one of the smaller things.
The biggest thing was control. We're really giving up total control to them, and it's not a large return on investment. So it might be that we might want to in-house do, you know, some improvements there, still go ahead with something, but not something so grandiose where we have no control over maintaining it, patrolling it, the security, where they have everything listed out. You're going to do this our way, you're going to do this our way, you're going to do this our way.
Right. I agree with that, but I also think we're missing a big opportunity here to have a fantastic facility. You know, I was just thinking about this the other day. I mean, gas prices are going up. You know, to drive to a lake like our lake, you have to drive quite a ways. I mean, you might go to Black Butte maybe, or drive over to Collins or Bullard's Bar, but we're talking quite a ways away. Now, granted, Lake Warrville's over there. It's
For
a whole
gas
different
power.
type of
A
experience.
different experience.
Yeah.
Okay, fishing's terrible over there, actually, by the way. Our fishing's great, but what I'm trying to make the point is, we are. You got to look at this as a regional lake. I mean, it is a regional resource. That's how I look at it. People, I mean, it's not just Paradise Irrigation customers using our lake. It's the residents from Magalia, the Paradise Pines, Chico, and people. You know, you see it at Kids Fishing Day. So what I think it's kind of I think it's a duty that I really think we should follow through with this, because I think we can really enhance the boating experience up there, and we'll have a facility that'll last more than 20 years. It'll probably last 50 years, maybe 60 years. I'm not sure. But, you know, when we sit here on the board and talk about getting grants, that's all we talk about, grants. Well, guess what? Every grant has its restrictions, okay? Even the SRF loans that we have on the books, okay? If we miss a payment, a couple payments, guess what? We're on the hook for paying the rest of the loan, whatever's still outstanding, okay? Right now, and we're not talking about in the future, okay? So everything we do has strengths. I do agree that this seems over the top. I do agree with that. But I really feel that we should move forward with this project. I've talked to the employees, the Lake Patrol folks, the water treatment folks. They're all in support of this project. It's not a problem. You talk to them about, well, what about the, you know, the items here you have to maintain? It's not a problem. We can do it.
Wasn't there an issue about motorized?
We'd have to pass an ordinance. We have a regulation in our procedure and policy manual, Appendix B2, I think, that has our regulations for boat use.
Right.
But they would say we'd have to pass an ordinance above and beyond that. It was in agreement with.
The Harbors and Navigation Act.
Yeah, I'd like to hear
And
that
the language,
section if that's
the language
possible.
was kind of ambiguous of exactly what that meant. But
I think it's just a
to
board
just-
action is what...
It refers to an ordinance.
No, an
And
ordinance.
frankly, we talked about this and decided to hold off on the legal research until the board
Oh,
confirmed
okay.
it had an interest in going forward.
Okay.
But just to your, I'd like to see it too, but I don't think this is the best fit. And I think maybe we could partner with maybe Park and Rec, or I don't know, some other entities or like-minded friends of the lake or something that we could do.
This is what we spoke about.
On a
because-
smaller scale,
because
with no strings, where we could still have control.
Nobody has ever put forward a big project like this to the community and said, hey, we would like to have more concrete. It's going to cost X amount. Get the Rotary that can contribute 10,000 and this 5,000 and this 2,000. And I can promise you, you can get a bunch of volunteers to go down and to go up and put the concrete in free. You know, that's the kind of thing.
sure.
Then we're not, it's our lake.
Yeah.
It's not theirs because the restrictions are so severe.
I get that.
We've never really tried. This is one of the bigger things that we've tried up here is this, and look how this has prospered.
Well,
What are you referring to?
At the gardens.
you know, I think because this has been such a while since we talked about this, and I think we sort of decided to hold off to wait and see what they came back with. Now that they've come back and said this is the way it's going to be, I think we should not make a decision on it tonight. I think now we should agendize it, maybe even have we've had committees for lesser things. Let's do an ad hoc and let's actually sit down and look at it now and then come back and then let's vote on it then, I think.
Well, that's what we just did. We were the ad hoc.
We are the ad
We
hoc.
went through everything. Now, if you want to agendize it and go through every item to see the ownership of it.
Okay, so
ad hoc for the ad
when
hoc.
did you guys?
Last week.
Oh, just last week.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It's right there. 3.
Okay, so because I didn't even know you guys had gotten an answer back from them and that you guys had met on
We
it.
Yeah.
just did and we did.
So you did and
That's
you
what
did,
this
but I
is.
didn't have any.
It was in the pack.
Yeah, it's in the packet.
Well, yeah, it's one line item.
Oh, no, it's in.
No, the letter's here, the whole
information's on
response is
Oh, I
in there.
didn't see that.
The whole
Okay,
response is in there.
okay.
Item by item.
I hear what you're saying, Dan and Ann, and I understand, but this is a professionally designed facility. This is a pretty high standard here. I'm not saying we can't do that on our own or with contributions or volunteer work.
It took a
or
lot
what
of
have
years
you,
to
but-
come to this level.
Right, but I'm just saying it's a great opportunity for this district to have a long-term, boat launching facility that I believe is going to attract even more people and will actually make some money. I don't know how much we'd make, but I think we could make some money on the revenues from this.
Do you think we ever want to put gas engines on it, though?
Well-
I can't envision the community wanting that.
If they want that experience, they can go to Lime Saddle.
I don't think we can do that for drinking water lake, can we?
Well, no, you
Oh,
can't.
you can
Like
do
Yarville's
it. It's
drinking
just
water
it's a board
source.
decision. I
Yeah,
think.
Yeah, it's our decision.
Policy decision. Yeah.
See, I don't ever see it coming up. to
If
that
the
level.
board is, unsure on the restrictions on that, if that's one of their main concerns, then I do agree we table it for another one and we allow Emily to really get into the weeds on that ordinance type thing.
As far as I'm concerned, even if that wasn't an issue, this is too onerous. There's too much control we're giving up. There's too much liability here, and we're giving up our operator, the way we operate the lake for one boat launch. And I think what's good, the good that has come of this from starting to end is that we ended up getting a boat launch in a better place. We moved it. So now we have a
We bought
direction
3 acres.
but we have a direction to go that's a lot better than the one we started out with.
That's true.
So it'll be a lot less expensive. I mean, I think we should do it in-house, with partnering with other like-minded agencies and leave this one alone.
I had asked Kevin a couple of questions, and he might have the answer for me.
Bill's had his hand up for 10 minutes. May I
Sorry,
recognize
Bill.
him? I'm sorry.
The Lake Committee actually started this process. In the Lake Committee, SPI came to us and said that they would clear the acreage. They had the crew up there, they had the equipment, they had just a small window to do it. So I actually asked for a special meeting of the Lake Committee to discuss this. So we discussed it considerable, but we couldn't do anything. And so Mark and I agreed that, and along with, I think with the rest of the committee, is that we would put this to your ad hoc committee as soon as possible, because what SPI was proposing was to clear the 3 acres, chip it, tear it all out for $13,000 and get it ready for the next process that would go into it. And it would save the district several thousands of dollars doing that. Okay, the window closed as of 2 days ago. They've gone. But this is your partnership you were talking about, Ann. Only this is a private one. We'll be back again, I'm sure, to log some of that country up there, and it may be available then. Or we can go in with a couple of backhoes whenever we find the time, or maybe we can hire a couple of guys that run backhoes to go in there, because it's only 3 acres. That's not a very large area.
Small amount.
Yeah. And the trees involved in there are quite small. There are no really large trees because it's such an infertile piece of ground. So we passed it on to you with the hope it would happen as quickly as possible for the SBI thing could be used. It was delayed to this. And I'm surprised it's not mentioned anywhere in here about what the Lake Committee did and talking.
My report got to you late,
Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah, I know, I looked in it and there's nothing in there about it.
Yeah, there is.
But
Yeah,
it's,
there,
on
item
the
two.
page.
we got it this evening, I think.
Yeah, item 2.
Okay, so that's how it got started, and I'm been real frustrated with this whole thing. We've been at it for about 4 years. We haven't got anything accomplished, and we've spent a lot of money on attorney fees and staff time. Jim Passanisi looking into different things, correspondence with the state, and everything. And like I explained to Mark the other night, we were talking about this a little bit. On the backside of this 3 acres, there is actually a road that goes around the lake on our property. It's a dirt road. It could be improved slowly, better gravel or something, but you could actually have, on this map, on the backside of it, you could have access. And trying to think of the Irishman's name. I always do this. I think of him as an Irishman, but SPI Forester. At any rate, his comment about us having access to the other boat launch is that he said it'd be all right with SPI if we continue to use it for a year or two. So we can continue to use that. The big use for this 3 acres is basically kids' fishing day and fishing season. We need this, and we've got the property, although the title isn't clear yet. And we could consider doing the road around the back, and we would leave behind all the regulations. The grant money is free. Okay, years ago I worked for the Soil Conservation Service, and I would go out and check on jobs that the SCS, now called the NRCS, had given the farmer money to put in, like a recycling water, pump it back up. And I'd go out and talk to the fellow because it was pending and nothing had happened. And I went out and asked him, well, what are you going to do this? And he says, no. And I said, well, we got the money and here's your engineering. It's all done for you and everything. And he says, yeah, but I can go down the street and get a guy with a backhoe and he'll come in and do it for half the money. And his cost share, part of it, was more than it would cost him to have the guy come in with the backhoe. And I think this is what we're looking at here. It's one of these things. So I agree with Dan and Ann that this is something we should make as part of our history, that we looked at it, we investigated it. It's been going back to the office manager that Christy took her place, actually had a relative that worked for this thing, and she found the first grant money and everything, and we've been working on it for, how long has Christy been here? At about almost a year, beyond that, and we haven't accomplished anything. So I'd like to see it go away, do something else.
I just had one more thing. I had asked Kevin a couple of questions on this, and maybe you have the
So
responses.
one of the questions was asked was, has any agency defaulted on one of these boating and waterways grants? We asked Boating and Waterways if there was any history of default from any other agency. They just went back 10 years, and they said that within the last 10 years, there's been no default of any agency on any of these boating and waterway grants. We do have other grants that we've gotten in the past that do have restrictions. The one difference is that most of them are infrastructure grants,
Right.
pipeline grants, and stuff like that. So, but there is reporting requirements, and there's documentation requirements. So anytime you do get free money, there are some strings attached, no matter what.
I have a question for Emily. Says here, if the state runs out of money, PID is left to pay all the costs or settle for a reduced scope of work. What if we're halfway into the project and half the money's spent and they run out of money? Is that breach of contract, and are we still held to the 20-year contract on our side then?
That's what it
Well,
says.
it wouldn't be a breach of contract because they built in here the possibility for that, and you assume no risk.
So if they said we're out of money, do the rest on your own, but we're still going to hold you to this 20-year contract.
Which number are you looking at?
I don't like that.
That was just one of the 15.
That's a big one.
Yeah, you
Real
think.
big one.
That was page,
Yeah.
it's on page 74.
76.
Oh, I thought it was.
76. Yeah.
It says if the state runs out of money, it's on page 74 on mine.
And they might say it several times.
Says agenda page 76. Is
Didn't they-
department approval I'm sorry, my bad, I turned the page. You
74.
were right, Ann. It is 74.
At the very top of the
Very
page.
top, yep. Question?
The state runs out of money, the idea is left to pay all costs or settle for a reduced scope of work. Yeah, I mean, they were pretty clear. This is
Yeah.
That's right.
So we'd still be held to the 20-year contract and
we have to
agreed on,
complete it.
even though they fizzled out and we didn't get any money for it.
I mean, I think being held to the 20-year contract is kind of the least of the problems if the state were to run out of money, because you'd be left with half a project and no way to pay for it, and you'd be, forced to come up with the money on your own because you can't leave it that way. They did expand here. They said if there's been no construction before a grantee is notified that the state has insufficient funds, then we've got to repay. And if there's been some construction, then, I mean, it sounds like they would work out some kind of compromise, for lack of a better word. But, and as Ann had pointed out, that's just one of the risks that you have to assume.
Yeah.
And that's all this is. This is just a risk-reward analysis. And you
And again,
decide if what outweighs what.
my point earlier is we take risks all the time.
I don't know.
With
too
our
big,
loans,
guys.
and so we have financial risks out there
Yeah.
at the state.
Yeah.
I would rather, I would rather us spend our own money and have control of the project. And I know we're not going to spend $672,000.
It'll take our lifetimes
yeah.
before something like this would even get close. But that's all right. Okay.
I'd like to put this off. I profess I hadn't looked at this in detail. I've been busy the last couple of days. If I had to vote on it tonight, I'd say no. But I hear what you're saying, and I don't want to do that to you, because the more I dig into it, I might change my mind. So I'd like to put it off until the next board meeting and do my due diligence and then come back with a good answer.
I could be
myself.
courteous and say maybe. I can promise you the more I read it, the stronger my no comes.
Okay.
And so I can promise you I won't change my mind. I don't know if he will, don't know if Ann will,
Well-
but I can promise you I won't. And so you can research it and be all for it, but I'll
Well, I
never
don't want to
change
waste
my
anybody's
mind.
time if the three of you are dead set
And it's
against
more attorney fees.
it. Mark and I have,
Wanted to state the case.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the case
I agree.
is, I feel like we're missing an opportunity here, so.
yeah, and I hear you. I would like to take the time to look at it, but
Are you likely to change your? Do you think you would ever be for it? Can you envision any reason? 'Cause if-
This thing's been going on before you guys got here, about 3 years before. So I think we've invested enough time, attorney costs, personnel costs, and everything else. And you coming from the political end of it, where you feel that government control is a bad thing.
Okay.
And I'm just sitting here and going, I don't see the core three votes changing, and I just want to see this thing go away. I don't. It's not free money to me. I told you my little story.
sounds like somebody needs to make a motion then.
okay.
I move to authorize
Thanks,
the
Bill.
interim district manager to send written notice prepared by district legal counsel to the Department of Parks and Recreation, Division of Boating and Waterways, that requests termination of grant agreement number C41223010, project number 1083, pursuant to Exhibit B, Article 21, termination.
Second. Everybody understand? Open to the public for.
Yes, thank you. We're a water company, and a darn good one. It just so happens to be a real plus that we have the lake and it is accessible for some recreation. I can understand the desire to have additional income by attracting more people there, but look what has happened to some other parks in Butte County, at Oroville, and the amount of homeless that have decided to take up residence there. Bidwell Canyon, the same kind of a problem. Chico goes too far to say, we don't want park rangers anymore, we need law enforcement officers. That kind of a problem is what you get when you want to attract more people in there, and then you let them in. We're a water company. Let's be a water company. We can do this other development for our own community, kind of like Bill is suggesting, and not go global with this at this great expense and have all of the pressure from the state on top of us. I think getting rid of this now is probably the wise thing to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Ward.
Anybody else wish to comment? Thank you. Bring it back to the board for a vote. It's not. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
3 to 2. Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your concern. Okay, 10D. Kevin.
It's the tough one.
Can we just cancel? Have they ever canceled for a full month and just postponed? Just joking.
Ever skipped a month?
Yeah. I'm going to be out of town for the regular scheduled board meeting, and so I was wondering if you guys would mind canceling that board meeting and hopefully rescheduling it for June 12th is the best date for me, but I can do anything after the 23rd, I believe it is.
June 12th works for me.
That happens to be town council evening, but it shouldn't conflict at all, does it?
No.
No, it
It's like
doesn't
two
for me.
channels on TV. You get
That's
to
it.
decide who to watch.
People have the excitement of both two things. Hey, one boring thing or another boring thing.
You can serve.
So if June 12th works, that works perfect for me.
Okay with me?
Works for me. Does it work for you, Bill? The 12th, June?
I don't know. I never know what my schedule is. It doesn't matter to me.
All right.
Doesn't matter.
All right.
Let's make a motion.
Okay,
Let's
go for
Don't
it.
have anyone talk about this.
Thank you very much.
Anybody wish to speak to this? Is it going to mess up your life if we alter an evening?
1 week early.
Yeah, that's right. So who do we get that evening?
So I move to cancel the regularly scheduled Board of Directors meeting on June 20th, 2018, and set a special meeting on Tuesday, June 12th, 2018.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Done.
I didn't hear Bill's voice, but
You okay with that?
Yeah.
June 12th?
thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get,
I try to listen always for
to get my,
that isn't going to be a hardship on you, I guess, Georgiana. It's not a big deal, huh? A week earlier, you'll have to be ahead of schedule. Okay. 10E. Kevin, Emily.
This is a resolution that was requested by the board to be placed on the agenda for discussion, and I will leave it at that. It's a censure resolution for a certain director, and if you guys want to discuss it, I think that's it's appropriate for you guys to discuss this.
Okay. Any discussion?
Start off one
You
end.
have any comments?
yeah, I have a 10-minute presentation.
Okay.
Go
I
ahead.
think it's that time.
Well, I thank you for the public hearing. What went on in privacy and in a closed session can't be referred to, and it's simply registered into the action, resulting action. So I'm very thankful to be able to talk about this in the public eye and have it recorded. The Policy and Procedures Manual is what this comes out of. It's not called the bylaws. So it was referred to as a bylaws. If you look in your, which I brought a copy of the bylaws, or what it really says in there, it says Policies and Procedures Manual. And that's why I felt that these situations are flexible, that they're not absolute rules that demand certain things. Now, I can't find anywhere in the Procedures Manual where it talks about censure. And Emily, I would like to ask you, is this something the district can actually do, can censure an employee publicly using our policy and manual?
Yeah, the authority is in the Code of Ethics. It's paragraph 714, and it says a perceived violation of the Code of Ethics policy can be addressed in any of three ways, and one of them is adoption of a resolution expressing disapproval of the conduct of the board member who has violated this policy.
But it doesn't use the word censure.
It doesn't use the word censure. That's the definition of censure.
There's other words that would, what's a synonym for censure?
A synonym for censure? I mean, you could use the word disapproval. you could use the word, I don't know, you could say you condemn the action, you could say you dislike the action. I mean, you could use any word you like, I suppose. I mean, the idea behind a resolution of this nature is for the board as a whole to publicly express its disapproval, dislike. I think those are probably the two words I'd use that are most.
Well, this morning Linda told me about another word. What was it, Linda?
Reprimand.
Reprimand. So the word reprimand could be used along with the words as meaning something of a censure.
I suppose, but I'm not sure that. I mean, the reprimand is something that I typically hear in the employment context, where there's some kind of authority to discipline, and that's not what this is. This is just the board as a whole considering whether it wants to adopt action to disapprove of conduct.
This is mainly about a conflict between me and one employee. For years on two boards, the cemetery board and the PID, I've done the thing I am accused of doing here. In other words, and I mentioned one incident where I was reprimanded and by the manager at the time and told not to do that again, and I agreed, in public. Now, in those years, I've done basically the same thing. I visit, walk around, may ask questions of employees. I do not try to interfere with anybody's work at all, because basically that's breaking the rules. If you tell somebody to move a shovel full of dirt, you're in trouble as a director, because you're actually liable if anybody gets hurt if you tell them to do anything and so forth. So I've never done that. And this employee alleges that I did that. And in my part of the report that came back from the investigator, I did not. I talked to him, I tried to educate him a little bit, and we kicked back and forth ideas on fencing, and I went away. I didn't tell him how to build his fence. And that was the issue that came out of this later. And then the issue on the fence...
Bill, I just want to caution you that personnel matters are confidential. So
yeah, I thought they were too until I'm standing here. This is a personnel matter and it's public. Now, how do you define that?
Well, I'm not sure what you're getting at. I'm just cautioning you that if
I don't think
report.
I'm not going to be cautioned about it. I'm going to go ahead and keep within the time schedule I have. Thank you for your advice.
I'll caution the board then that personnel matters can be confidential. You have a confidential investigation
report. I'm
report.
not going to mention any employee's name.
Okay.
What I'm going to say is basically what happened. I went and saw the fence after it was in construction and asked one of the men there who supervised this. And he told me. So I went to the committee, the garden committee, ad hoc garden committee, and asked for their permission to change the fence because of things. And I would donate the labor and money for whatever I did. And one of my sons helped me, and two of the volunteers helped me. And Kevin was at that meeting. So Kevin was informed about this coming about, like it's supposed to be in the manual. And this was a deliberate thing on my part, to make sure that the manager was informed. He didn't say anything. And the materials and so forth were donated, and the district wasn't out a dime on this. So basically it's a thing he said. There's no way of, because these were personal communications between him and me, that you can actually judge who was telling the truth and who wasn't. And of course, I don't think he was. And then we had several months went by, and then an investigation came, and I talked to the investigator and gave my part of the story. Then we had the meeting, and only a few days before that, I was presented with the result of the investigation. But I'll go back to the background for me. It's 18 years of doing this and doing it successfully, finding out all sorts of information and so forth. And sometimes I've been tactless and maybe a little bit overbearing, but that's somewhat, as my family tells me, the way I do things sometimes. I have to tell you this. to the yard to look while they were working. Men were working all around, and I walked around the yard, and I didn't stop and talk to anybody. The personnel man, were unnamed, stopped me and asked me if I needed a hard hat. And I said, well, I'm just leaving. I said, I'm not going to be around anymore. I'm going to go. So I left. And then later on, I don't remember if it was that day or the next day, I came back to check on something else. And there was a crew working there on the air conditioning heating system. None of them was wearing a hard hat, a contractor. And I asked the contractor, why aren't you wearing a hard hat? And he says, well, it's not posted. So George had a sign made the next day, posting it as a hard hat. So this was my hard hat. I still have it. $7. It doesn't fit very well. So I came back with my hard hat. And I even went to George's office, and he got very upset with me. Told me he thought I was making a fool of him, and I didn't. That was not the intention. At any rate, so what happened? There was filed a complaint by the same person with the district about me abusing the contractor, telling the contractor what to do and how to do it. And of course, all I did is ask him a question about hardware. And didn't abusing his time or schedule, didn't slow up anything, just got one answer to one subject. And that's the illustration of this employee not telling the truth. When the truth came out, the whole matter went away.
I'm going to renew my caution to the board.
Pardon?
I'm going to renew my caution to the board.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Maybe.
That's the end of the story. And the point's made. HP, Hewlett-Packard, when they first started out, ownership of the company, would go around and walk around to the different offices and so forth they had under them and talk to employees about what was going on and how their suggestions were. They asked questions and inspected. I'm a community representative. I represent the whole community for PID. People come to me and ask questions. I even had that happen today with a young lady asked me about something, what to do. I view my walking around as a service to the community. Most boards I've served on, regardless of who was there, very seldom did people walk around. I notice Mark does this somewhat, and I think Dan does. That's just part of the way I feel I have to do the job, because I find out all sorts of interesting things, and I've resulted in things that saved the district money or ended up doing some other things. So as far as I'm concerned, my doing this walking around, inspecting, and talking to employees. The other day I made a trip. I hadn't been making any things around. I talked to the mechanic briefly, asked him about two things, and he gave me answers, and then I left. And I didn't make any comment to him about anything about it. I haven't brought it to the board's attention or anybody else. I did tell Mark about it. So I do that. So what's my desired action? Is that you vote this down. I think this is like two kids in a sandbox throwing dirt. And I don't think it helps the district any bit to take one of their long-term employees, long-term service to the community, and get in a sandbox and I said this and he said that, and decide that me is the biggest target in the group, ends up being censured, and nothing happens to the employee.
Thank you, Mr. Kellogg.
Okay. I'm simply going to read this.
Before we move on, can I just
Please.
go on record and state that that the sentiments of one director does not hold weight with the full district about the appearance of character of one of our employees, and about that is not how the full board feels about the character of unnamed employee.
Thank you.
Point taken.
Resolution by the Board of Directors of the Paradise Irrigation District regarding the censure of Director William Kellogg. Whereas the Board of Directors received a complaint alleging that Director William Kellogg was engaging in harassing behavior by confronting staff regarding job duties and performance. Whereas an investigation into the allegations was conducted and the allegations were sustained. Whereas board policy provides individual board members shall not give orders or direction to any staff member or the manager, either publicly or privately, but may make suggestions and recommendations to the manager. Directors individually shall refrain from interfering with district operations. Directors in their capacity as a board member may speak with district staff and seek information pertinent to district operations. Such inquiries from and contact with district staff shall most often be made through the manager. The manager shall arrange for the time and place for staff members to meet with the director. Any staff member may bring a staff member of their choice as a neutral observer. The manager shall be advised of this ahead of the meeting. If an employee wishes to contact the director about business, they may do so without contacting the manager. However, the director should request that a second director attend any such meeting. Conversely, if a director wishes to make an inquiry of staff without the manager's knowledge, they may do so only if two directors are present and at all times during the inquiry, and the contacted staff member shall have the right to have a district observer of their choice present during this inquiry. Such contact will only be during normal working hours of the district and when the employee is present at work. A director acting in his capacity as a citizen or customer shall be afforded the same rights and courtesies as other citizens and customers. To facilitate integration and effective interpersonal relations with the board, manager, and employees, the board recognizes the importance of limiting its contact with managers, staff, or employees. Directors shall not cause the manager or staff to generate any special work without board approval. Nothing in this section shall prevent a majority of a quorum of the board from appointing committees of its own members to conduct investigations into conduct of any officer or department of district government or any matter relating to the welfare of the district, and delegating to these committees such powers of inquiry as the board may deem necessary. The primary responsibility of the board is the formulation and evaluation of policy. Routine matters concerning the operational aspects of the district are to be delegated to the professional staff members of the district. A code of ethics, and in seeking clarification for policy-related concern, especially those involving personnel, legal action, annexation, property acquisition and development, finances and programming, said concerns could be referred directly to the manager. Whereas the Paradise Irrigation District Code of Ethics provides that a violation of policy by a director can be addressed by an adoption of a resolution expressing disapproval of the conduct of the board member who has violated the property. Now therefore be it resolved that 1. Director Kellogg's confrontation of staff regarding job duties and performance is in violation of board policy. And number 2, that the board of directors of the Paradise Irrigation District does not approve of or condone Director Kellogg's contact with Paradise Irrigation District employees outside of the chain of command. 3, the board of directors urges Director Kellogg to adhere to the adopted board policies.
I would like to take to task me confronting somebody. In all these years, I haven't done that. I haven't confronted an employee at the cemetery district. I haven't confronted an employee at PID. I didn't confront this employee involved. His side of the story to me is nothing but a lie, just like the hard hat incident.
Does the public want to comment?
Yes, I would like to open this to the public now before we take a vote on this matter.
Thank you for this opportunity, having been on several boards and committees in the past and been with companies where censure was one of the most serious of disciplines that was allowed within policies. I would think that unless this is escalated into numerous occasions, this type of censure is a little excessive. And frankly, I would say item number 3 might be the appropriate language for a directive to Director Kellogg. It just seems that if there haven't been years and years and years of abuse of this, censure is just too strict of an enforcement in this case. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to this?
I haven't been coming to meetings that long, but I see this man as a very valuable source of information. He's got a hell of a lot of knowledge and background. I hate to see us censor the guy. I've made mistakes with personnel, too, when I was in management, and we all have made mistakes dealing with people. I think we ought to just, if he did something wrong, slap his hand, let's get on with business. We got more important things to talk about than censuring this man. I think he's too valuable. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the first time, ma'am, that you've spoken to us, so please give us your name.
Linda Haddeman.
Thank you.
When you described the process, you said that there was an investigation made into the allegations, and you said the investigation sustained the complaints. But you gave no details about that. It is a side of the story that we have not heard. And it seems that it was done perhaps in a confidential meeting, but the public, such as one of myself is one of the public, would like to know how that those allegations were sustained. What is the evidence against the actions taken by Bill Kellogg?
Can you please, I was going to say, can you please answer that for us on a legally correct method?
I can try. I mean, the district received a complaint. The district hired an independent investigator. The investigator conducted an investigation by meeting with staff and others that may have knowledge about the allegations. And the investigator issued findings. Now, because public employees have privacy interests, that report is confidential. And this isn't a hearing. I know, Bill, you referred to it as a hearing. And this isn't a hearing. There is no evidence introduced. There is no consequence for this. This is a symbolic resolution for the board's consideration. They can adopt it, they can revise it, they can reject it.
It seems unfair to me to keep in confidence the other side of the story, and we've heard Mr. Kellogg's side of the story.
Well, Mr. Kellogg he chose to present his side of the story. The district didn't disclose any of it.
Yes, but the public doesn't know the other side of
That's
the story.
correct. It's not a matter for public disclosure.
So we are just being kept in the dark, the public.
I don't think I'd characterize it that way, but I will say that public employees have privacy interests, and given the nature of the complaints, the district is protecting those privacy interests.
So that's it.
Anyone else wish to speak to this? Okay, then we'll bring it back to the board to You're right. To proceed further or discuss, if you wish to have further discussion, or either that or else we just take a vote on it, whatever is your choice.
I had a word change on sentence 3. The board of directors, instead of urges, how about advises? Does that make any difference? Maybe not.
Not to me.
It's pretty much a similar word, but
Okay, thank you.
it doesn't alter the action much. Well, if
I'd like to say something. We cannot disclose because we have privacy. The employees have privacy. There's things that go on in closed session. The public, this is the result of those sessions. And I don't take this action lightly. And I would not be a part of this action unless I felt it was necessary, that it was our only recourse. And it's not just one action. It's not just one time. That this is not, this is the only method we have in our policies and procedures manual to let our voices be heard on this behavior. So that's as honest as I can be about it. I wish we weren't doing this tonight, but Director Kellogg has indicated he has no intention of changing his behavior, and this is the only recourse that's left to us as a board.
If there are no other comments, then Georgiana, would you please start the roll call vote?
Do we have a motion to adopt the resolution?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed by the reading that it was, we do need a motion and a second, please.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2018-05, resolution by the Board of Directors of the Paradise Irrigation District regarding the censure of Director William Kellogg.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please, Georgiana.
Director Solik?
Yay?
Director Rice?
Aye.
Director Jacobson?
Yes?
Director Kellogg?
No.
President Whitland?
And no.
No.
So it passes 3-2. Okay. Item 11, committee reports. Ad hoc demonstration garden, Ann and Bill.
We're moving ahead with the garden in a regular way. We hope that the last of the plants will be in Friday or Saturday. We're not sure for sure, but if it is, I'll see that they're planted. And Kendall is going to help me by laying them out. It's only a small amount of plants, so one person can do it in a half hour or something. The water system's almost all done. As soon as those plants go on the ground, the water system will be done. I still want to plant some native grasses along the fence for long-term benefit for the district. I find that most people in the district have no idea that they have native grasses growing in their backyard or something, and they're very drought resistant. And it's interesting, they sometimes don't have much in raising value, but they are plants that survive through our dry summers and everything. At one time, I didn't know they existed and thought the plants I found where somebody else had planted them years ago, and it turns out that's not the case. And there's a whole industry that's grown up around it in the seed business. So, Ann is doing the hard skate thing, so I think she should talk about that.
We're going to have just a display of the semi-permeable hardscape that you can use in lieu of lawns. And Mike was nice enough to build the frame, and we had donations for half of it, of the materials going in display, and the other half is coming from North State Aggregate. And then just the pavers need to be put in where the bench is going to go. That's in that same area. So we're moving along, and it's coming together fairly quickly. The plaque's ordered. The dedication date is set for June 29th. So
It looks fabulous out there.
It
It's
does.
the beginnings.
It does.
It's the beginnings.
Great.
Good work, everybody.
Yeah, the whole committee.
Absolutely.
People involved.
Yeah.
Is there a date? See, I've asked this, I think, before. Is there an approximate date of christening or anything?
June 29th.
Oh, thank you. Read the rest of it. I need to write that down. Yes. Sure, by all means, absolutely.
Well, it just so happens that, from the onset, there were people from Master Gardeners and the Paradise Garden Club that were interested in this. And over time, some of them keep stopping by to see what's going on. Now, anybody who has gone past the corner of Billy and Clark and past the hospice house has seen the Paradise Garden Club's Garden of the Month sign. So it's there for the month of May. Well, some of the people in the garden club think maybe in June, this demonstration garden should be Garden of the Month for the commercial enterprise.
Hey, that's a good idea.
It also means that if somebody is holding a dedication here in June, that sign may also be in the picture for our publicity.
Hey, of course.
Even though it's still evolving, that makes it just like everybody else's garden. Gardens evolve. And yet what we've done so far, it's now pretty impressive.
It is.
So if the garden club wants to do that, I think that's kind of cool. So you may be selected for Garden of the Month in June.
Hey.
Pretty cool.
Well, thanks, y'all. I think it was Doug Flesher's idea, wasn't it? The concept, Bill?
That evolved from
Yeah.
a
Right.
small market garden into this demonstration garden where we have all sorts of irrigation systems, thanks to Mike, that have been put in, regulations on it, and there is, the Kendall has designed it. I don't know much about ornamental horticulture and laid out the plants, and it's from Minden's nursery. Other nurseries have contributed, and Paradise Nursery has given us a little bit of stuff. And Ann has been very good at going out and getting these signs together and everything like that. The physical work has pretty much been up to the men involved, and we hopefully we'll get it up. The sign looks great. It was made by Butte College, and Ann was involved in getting that done, and it's laying on the ground, and it will soon be put up and concreted in. And the plaque has been ordered, the plaque for Doug, and it should be along not too long. But there's still time, Cliff, for donation.
From anybody. Here.
If you want your company name on it. We have a thanking donors little wall.
How long will that
Your
stay
company
there?
name. It's going to be in perpetuity. It goes on the 3x5 bulletin board, thanking the donors and room for new donors.
Certain amount for that?
My wife and I keep talking about it, so I'll have to do that. That'd be great.
Well, has Mike talked to you about the trek to go
We
into
kind
the...
of
The
appreciate
Trex,
everybody
yeah.
that donates.
Mike, somebody's going to call me in regards to that Trex? Yeah, they have it.
Yeah,
Okay.
he knows. He knows
Yeah.
you have it. I don't know if he has your number, but I'll make sure he does.
My numbers.
Payments from my board meetings towards it. For starters.
Okay.
$15 boat pass. Huh?
Any meeting.
Yeah,
Next
that's right.
committee.
Okay, thank you. Next committee, Paradise Lake and Recreation. Lake Recreation Committee, yes. I read it twice.
Yeah, I'm chairman of that one too. And that is, we talked about earlier when we talked about the property and the parking and so forth. We talked about that at length at the last meeting. We'll have another meeting later this month. There is in the reports, and here the report on the finances and the kids' fishing day. The committee hasn't had a chance to look at that yet, and so that'll be what we're going to be talking about. I'm hoping the committee, thanks to Ann, we have the additional responsibilities, the botanical garden and water quality. So we'll investigate if there's places there where the committee can be helpful to the board and talk about it, and probably have a meeting with the new Park and Rec manager. I've already talked to him one day about the botanical gardens and took him out and showed it, the location. They want to put a park there, and I'm hoping in my lifetime, which isn't going to be that much longer, is that we'll actually get something done there. So, and Mark, you want to add anything to that?
No, that's great. Kids Fishing Day was great.
Huge success.
We were out there.
A lot of fun.
You were out there. The photo booth went over very well, I think. you know, the kids were going into the photo booth and getting their pictures taken. That was a really good idea. So yeah, we're planning for next year, even better.
I couldn't believe the size of the fish that they were catching there. When you say that it's trophy size or whatever, I kind of am sure. Wow, these are giant things.
And some of the kids
Whoa.
were this tall.
I know. That's right.
Yeah.
And it was fun to see them catch them and all the excitement. Okay, and of course, the third ad hoc committee, you've already heard about our comment, and that's past issue. Director, anybody from public wish to speak to this one? No? Number 12, director's comments. Start with you, Mark, maybe?
Oh, okay.
Or anybody that wishes to just jump up and speak?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody that came tonight, in the audience here, the public. Thanks for participating. Appreciate that. And I also wanted to thank the employees and all the volunteers at Kids Fishing Day. I sent an email out last year. I didn't get one out this year. I got busy and kind of forgot to send my email out. But I want to thank everybody at Kids Fishing Day, from everybody that volunteered. What a fantastic event that is, and I'm really proud of that event.
Next year, I'm going to make sure ahead of time and know and stick it on my schedule and be there the whole day instead of only a portion of it. So, Ann, anything? Cliff, anything?
Nothing to add.
Bill, anything further?
Yeah. I've had a lot of people asking me about what we're doing about the new manager, and that hopefully will, in closed session tonight, we'll come to a final on that. The board has worked very hard on that project and had some surprises presented to us, and one fellow withdrew at the last minute. We're just, as a board, we're working very well, I think, much better than the previous board, and we're getting a lot of work done. That needs to be done for the community, and we take, as you saw tonight, we take our time and discuss and come to a vote on issues. I think that you guys have a very good board that the community can support. Talk to the different directors anytime. We all have divisions, but if you want to talk to us about something outside our division and so forth, that's fine. It just depends on how the director wants to receive it. And you don't have to go through the manager to do that.
Thank you. And to everybody, Robin, please come more often. We'll always try to make it friendly, and hopefully we would just love your input.
Mr. President, can I get something on record real quick?
Yes.
There was statements made about me earlier today about my character and about maybe some criminal activity that maybe was done about me if I was getting kickbacks or if I was getting different things done. I want to go on record that is vehemently a lie and slanderous to my character, and I do take that very, very serious. So I just want that on record right now, and I appreciate it if it would stop.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you, Kevin.
And we recognize that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we have to go to closed session, and it's going to be a fairly lengthy one, I suspect. I don't think I have to read all of these, do I? Because they're written? Yeah.
You have to read them?
Do I have to read each one?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. 13A, Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release. 13B, Conference with Labor Negotiators. C, Conference with Legal Counsel, Existing Litigation. D, Public Employment District Manager. I don't think I have to read all the code sections, do I? Thank you. Closed session we go.